Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody had a pleasant weekend. This is the February 24th City Center Committee. First, I'll start with our land and water acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoulder Lake 40 First Nation, Treaty Cree territory. Want to cover that? So today we're here with our clerk, Peter Bridgestone, who's going to help us try to navigate this, and our staff who will try to help keep us in control as much as they can. We're also here with Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Rollins and my Councillor Orlando, make the dynamic trio of the City Center Committee. So start off with the anything I need to know right now?
No, we just need a motion for the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Gilroy, all in support, opposed, carried. Moving on to reports. Semi-annual summary of delegated authority to award per capita land education community center grant.
So moved.
So moved. Any thoughts, comments? Seeing none, receive this information.
Yeah.
All in support? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed, carried. We have now a per capita grant for the West End Cultural Center.
Yeah. And just to put some things on the record, because the West End Cultural Center does so many great things for our community, and the Ellis Street Festival is one thing that they really do a lot of great work. And I know they're requesting more money, and so I'd like to give them a little bit more, but I can't give them the full ask. The per capita grant has not increased in years, and this is the grant that I use to fund these projects, and we're getting way more demand for them. So it's hard, but I do know that they're doing great work. So I'd like to give them 800.
800?
Yeah.
Okay. So motion amended to the 800 to assist the cost of running the hot dog cart. They are a great group, I agree. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in support? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to the Fort Garry Women's Resource Center. Is for me. So moved.
All right. I'll just take the chair and call the question or move it myself. I think that was consensus.
In the 2012 Council Rollins.
So moved.
St. James Childcare. Yeah. So another one. So moved.
So moved.
All for, yeah. Sorry. No.
Yeah, that was Fort Garry Women's Center. That was moved unanimously, and then
James.
the James Child Care Center for $500. So moved.
Number 5. Well.
And then number 5, so James Child Care Center was moved and received unanimously. Land Dedication Reserve Fund for William Osler Skating Rink. This is an application in the amount of 114,000 and some change from the City Center Community Committee Land Dedication Reserve, the River Heights Fort Garry Ward allocation to assist William Osler Skating Rink. Excellent move, Councillor Orlando. So moved.
Yeah, this group is really important. It's a reference for me. I have 2 of these groups now running. They're hard, but when you find the right people that run these community parks, I call them. This one is being run by a gentleman named Tom Hayward and his clan up in the Southern Rights area. And they do great events there. They take care of it. I know we've been shutting down in the recent couple of times. I've been quite unhappy about it, but we've been shutting down some community park programming. So the neighborhood, we need to enhance and help these neighbors go forward. So the arena, the boards are just tired. They need to be replaced, but they don't really generate any funds. So even though the Parks Department, they want me to put in other places, I really do believe in these community park models. It's local, people love it. So I'm more than happy to support this. And they do have their barbecue coming up. Just keep ears open.
Okay. That was moved by me, so I believe there's consensus on that one too.
All right, back to me, I guess. Yeah, or Rich, that's you.
Unless you want me to keep going.
Take some time. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a simple extension of time for a proposed closing of a public lane. This is a hearing that we had here concerning 968 Marion Boulevard. So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none carried. Extension of time for 1-10-22 and 10-38 Dunn Highway.
So moved.
All support?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none carried. And then, asphalt concrete lane improvement project for Councillor Rollins area.
Yeah, so this is for a local improvement project to proceed as part of the local improvement program, and it has been funded through the Public Works Granular Roads capital account in a 50-50 sort of way. Both Councillor Mays and I benefit from this sometime. The local improvement would take place in the back lane off Windermere, Somerville, in between Point and Riverside Drive. There was a petition that was turned in to the city clerk's department, and they got sufficient petitions, and so the public service is recommending petitioners, sorry, and so the public service is recommending the local improvement proceed. So moved.
So moved, all support. None carried. All right. Anything else right now? I think we may have some motion or two later on, but we have to write them up first. So they do that prior or after the public hearing, which is at 10:30.
Yeah, do we need a motion for that in advance? To suspend the rules?
We can move a motion now, but we can also move that motion.
Let's do it later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want to come back a little bit earlier and do it then, like at 10:15, or do you want to just do it after the public
Yeah.
hearing? Done. So rules meeting to adjourn until 10:30. All support. Thank you, everybody. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Welcome back. We adjourned for a bit after we did our reports. Now we're in the public hearing section. I first like to do a land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples in the national homeland of the Red River Métis, our drinking water from Shoal Lake 40 and Treaty 3 territory. Okay, so like I said, we have two items today on our agenda for public hearing. We have the first one will be zoning agreement amendment for 915 McMillan and a variance for 128 River. Anything I'm missing?
No,
I will have motions to move at the end of the agenda, Mr. Chair, but they're unrelated to the hearing, and I want to privilege the hearing, obviously not the motions.
People get the hearing done,
Yeah.
and we can go into those.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
thank you, Mr. Chairperson. In accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw, the process the committee will follow is the applicant will be heard first, followed by those in support of the application. Next, those registered in opposition are heard, followed by those registered for information. Finally, the applicant may return to speak in rebuttal to comments made. However, no new information is permitted. Please note that when your name is called, it is your opportunity to speak. However, you are not obligated to do so. For a more in-depth overview of the public hearing process and other information pertaining to what happens before, during, and after a public hearing, please consult the City Clerk's Department website. Please note that all public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. Should you have any questions after the hearings have concluded, please contact the City Clerk's Department. Item 1 is a zoning agreement amendment at 915 McMillan Avenue under file ZAA 10/2024. Please note, additional communications were received in support and in opposition of this matter, which have been distributed to all members of the committee. So at this time, if it is the will of the committee, we can get an overview from the area planner.
Good morning, committee. There were subject properties located on the northeast corner of McMillan Avenue and Stafford Street in the McMillan neighborhood of the Fort Rouge East Fort Garry ward. The property is 12,060 square feet in size and currently vacant. In 2021, the Appeals Committee approved variances to support a 4-story mixed-use building, and Council approved an associated subdivision and rezoning application. The subdivision and rezoning was finalized and the land is now zoned RMU, with a zoning agreement caveat requiring that the project be built in substantial conformance with the 2021 approved plans. The applicant proposes a different design than what was approved in 2021, and as such, requires the subject zoning agreement amendment to remove the above-mentioned caveat. The proposed development is a 4-story building with 30 residential units on upper floors and 2 commercial spaces on the ground floor. The development will contain 15 car parking stalls, 10 indoor and 5 off the lane, and 10 indoor secure bike parking stalls. The building will contain a mix of substantial facade materials, including brick and cement siding, and will include balconies. The property straddles both the low-rise mixed-use Area B and the medium-density residential areas of the Cord and Osborne Plan and meets policies for both, including being up to 4 stories in height, having ground floor commercial against Stafford, and having varied massing setbacks and roof lines. The proposal meets the PDO zoning regulations as well, including yards, entrances, and hiding parking behind and under the building. The key changes between the 2021 proposal and the new proposal are that the 2021 proposal had underground parking. The new proposal has ground level parking. The 2021 proposal had a mix of 4 and 3 stories. The new one is 4 stories across. 2021 had 22 dwelling units. This proposal has 30. Previous proposal had no bike room, while this one does provide a bike room inside the building. Previous proposal had an outdoor commercial patio that has been removed. And finally, the previous proposal had balconies on the north and south sides, and this proposal has balconies, does not have balconies on the north and or south sides. So the Urban Planning Division supports the zoning agreement amendment because the design changes since 2021 meet applicable policy. That's the introduction from public service.
Any questions? One question. The lot right now, before it was rezoned, there was 3 lots. Now I see a house still on one and 2 houses gone. So is it still 3 lots?
It's 1 lot now because the subdivision and rezoning was approved earlier, which also consolidated the 3 underlying lots. It's 1 lot. No.
So it's still 3 lots?
No, it's 1 lot.
Okay, got what you're saying. So let's go back in the past a bit. That will change. So before we had 350s that were amalgamated into 150, right?
Yes.
Now, going forward, is it still the 150? 153 with the lot size? There is still 1 house that we're looking to sell. That I see a for sale sign on it, on the 3rd lot, but I don't understand why that house going for sale, while the other 2 lots are designated. Or that 3rd house can go bye-bye. I don't understand.
I would need to check.
The lot for sale is actually.
We'll have to, you can come back and answer those questions, for sure, no problem, thanks.
My understanding is the lot that we're looking at today is completely vacant, zoned and consolidated into 1 lot with RMU zoning. I'd need to check,
It's not
iView to refer, like,
lots, but we demoed one building, 1 house still stays.
okay.
But again, we can get that information later on, but you're not too sure about that. But they're coming today for the 1 lot, the 150 meters frontage. Lots of changes, please.
We may need to come back to this. I need to consult some software.
At the end, I'll leave that question on the table, and if anybody else has the information, they can do that out. That's fine. Any other questions?
Not right now.
Not right now. All right. Commissioner?
So first up, we'll call the applicant, Mr. John Winthrop.
There he is. Hey, John. Hi. Johnny, I don't think I have to remind you what you're doing. You've been here a few times.
Yes.
I'll just put it for the audience, so people who haven't been here before. You'll get up to 10 minutes. It's not a Q&A session. We can ask you questions, but you can answer them, maybe not. Vice versa. You can ask us questions, but we generally don't answer back.
Yeah.
That's about it. So yeah, just speak to the agenda item. And otherwise, I know you know all this, but that's just for anybody else who's speaking. And we're generally nice. Don't be.
I know that.
Don't be too nervous. You may debate that, but that's a different story. Go ahead, John.
So I'm the applicant. My name's John Witcher, professional planner, but I'm actually going to get my colleague Karine to deliver the presentation today. She's zooming in. She's works or is studying overseas right now in Europe. So I'm going to get her to do the visual presentation and speak to it. If there's any questions that come up that she can't answer, happily we'll either come back here or sit down. We're using our same 10 minutes. We'll answer any questions that she might not have, but she did also the public engagement. So I believe she's in the Zoom room waiting. But just to clarify the first question, the legal description is Lot 1, Plan 69508. There is no house. We're not associated with a house next door that I did see a for sale sign. So the land is completely vacant. It has no trees on it. It's a vacant parcel of land right now. So that house is a separate item.
It is separate, so it's not part of this.
It's not part of this application, but Kareem will get into the details of that. But I want to let you know that it's all been consolidated and we have a new land title. And the caveat that you register or the city registered is why we're here today is on that title, because that was completed. Okay, I'll turn it over to Kareem.
All right, Karina, if you want to start your video, unmute your mic. We'll put 10 minutes on the clock for you.
Okay, well, hello, let me get right into it. I'll pull it up. Okay, so as said, yeah, we are here today bringing forward the final proposal for 915 McMillan. As stated, it's a 30 dwelling unit proposal with 15 parking stalls, and we're seeking the final agreement or the final approval of the design in accordance with the product final zoning agreement amendment. This file was from the zoning amendment was from going on from last year on June 2024. Previously in 2020, we brought this forward, as mentioned, for several variances and subdivision and general rezoning. So as also mentioned, this is a 4-story unit. It's within 800 meters of a high frequency transit area. The general area context, as said, in the Fort Rouge East Fort Garry ward on the corner of Stafford and McMillan, surrounded by a variety of different zoned lots. The subject lands are currently within an intensification target area. The combined sewer district that it's within is the Jesse district. According to the Mature Communities Overlay Map, to clarify, the subject lands are outside Area 1 and 2, and within the Mall and Corridors Overlay Map, it's also outside of any regional mixed-use corridor or urban mixed-use corridor. As you can see here, this is where you can see that the site is currently between two different residential areas, falling within both on its western boundary, the low-rise mixed-use and the medium density residential area on its eastern side of this property. You can see that here as exemplified zonings, or the area labeled as 7 and 4B, it just falls directly on the line between those two. There's a lot of amenities within a 15-minute walk of the site. There's a high school, the Grove Pub up north. There's Starbucks, Tim Hortons, and Rexall to the south, a community club to the west within an 11-minute walk, a grocery store to the east, and all the amenities and services of Grant Avenue to the south. There's also several downtown bus routes for any potential inhabitants of the development, such as lines like 29 to 36 and the 18 to the south. There's also further routes available, a couple direct lines, and the frequent express line as well, too, all very close. For cycling options, there's a lot of transportation routes, as you can see, that are available. There's a couple informal routes to the north and east, and more formal buffered and protected bike lanes to the south and west. Also, multiple car shares within a walking distance of the subject lands as well. So here's the view facing north on Stafford. There's no front driveways, as you can see here, and concrete sidewalks on either side of it. This is Route 70. It's a 24-hour truck route, and it's also a winter route. The secondary route, secondary street of McMillan, this is facing east. You can see that red dot, that's where the subject lands are. There's also no front driveways here. There's concrete sidewalks as well, on-street parking, and it's P3 at 66 feet wide. The public lane is all concrete. There's some garages, a couple driveways, they're all gravel. This is approximately 20 feet wide here, and this connects Wentworth to the east to Stafford, which is bordering the subject lands on the west. As for the surrounding land zones and what they're zoned as, we have C2 and RMF to the north, some R1 to the east. That's that direct neighbor to the east, which is R1. We have R2 and R1 to the south, CMU to the southwest, C1 to the west, and RMF to the northwest. Here's what we're looking at when we're facing north. This is Dorchester, multiple dwellings here on the northwest. There's that RMF. This is a multiple dwelling place as well, too, at 4 stories. Directly west, we have a commercial unit. To the southwest, we have a mixed-use commercial residential unit. This, I'd like to note, is also 4 stories. Directly south, we have a couple more different dwellings. This is when you're standing on McMillan facing south, this is a single detached dwelling. To the east, this is the neighbor here. This is a single detached dwelling. So as we had mentioned before, this is currently now zoned RMU, as passed in the prior files, with it being classified as residential, or I'm sorry, as being on both a low-rise mixed-use land and medium-density area land. You can see that here. Along the western side, this is where the commercial units will be. And correct, it is currently vacant lands. This is what the proposed development is to currently look like. This is if you're facing it northeast on at 30 dwelling units. It's about 2,700 square feet of commercial, 4 stories in height. Residential entrance will be on McMillan, with the commercial entrance being from Stafford. And as mentioned before, balconies only on the east and west sides. Here's the general parking layout. We have 10 indoor parking spots, 5 outdoor. We have 16 bike parking. There's a 5-foot front yard setback on McMillan, a 3-foot side yard setback on Stafford, 10.6-foot rear yard setback to the rear public lane, and 11-foot east side yard setback against 909 McMillan, and vehicle access from the public lanes. As mentioned, this proposal as it stands right now is currently within the zoning agreement amendment, such that commercial units are only located at grade within the part of the owner's land that abuts Stafford and falls within that low-rise mixed-use B policy area. And it is within substantial conformance with the plans that were approved prior in 2020. And all associated variances from before were internally approved. There was some notable changes that was correctly brought up earlier. It has gone through a couple different alterings between 2020 and 2024. I won't get into that again right now. There is some trees and shrubs alongside McMillan and alongside Stafford. There's a variety of dwelling units for varying sizes. We have a 401 square foot, for example, an 886, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. So there's a variety of different suites. And just so there's a little bit extra talking time for John, I will just skip forward to the end of this. Thank you.
Hi, so it's again, John Winchup, as we've shown on the slide. It's the lands are vacant. The neighbor house to the east is for sale. We're not involved in that property. This is a zoning agreement amendment. When council previously approved it, it required the plans at that time to be constructed in conformance with those plans. Typical in almost, I think, every public hearing I've ever done. plans that are shown at a public hearing, they always change, no matter if it's a football stadium, IKEA, or a duplex, they always change. So that's typically normal for something like this, for a plan to change from what you're showing at a public hearing to what you're trying to do for a building permit. We're at that plan approval stage. Doesn't typically come back to the committee, but I understand this was a more involved project back when I wasn't involved. It was more involved back when it was initially approved. So at that time, council said we want these plans, if it changes, to come back to a public hearing through the zoning agreement amendment. Otherwise, this would be a plan approval at the public meeting portion, typically at the committee, not typically at a public hearing such as this. So it's normal to see plans change and for us to be usually in front of the city center committee, not so much for a public hearing. So if there's any questions you have about the design or anything like that related to the plan approval, Green did do a public engagement. I should mention that. She didn't touch on it too much here, but we did do a public engagement back in June when we initially filed the application.
Any questions for Mr. Woodchuck?
What changes were kind of made from the community consultation to now?
None. So the plans that you have here today, we didn't change. Those were the exact same plans that Green used. The only changes would have been typically when we engage with the city of Winnipeg and give the plans to the zoning officer, they'll come back and say you're missing a shrub or you're missing something. Information gaps. On this one, I believe they got back to us in July and wanted some more information related to I think a parking stall in the back of the lane. And I think we had to add a couple more shrubs, but we didn't make significant changes. So I will say that we
I
made
just
changes.
thought I heard something about balconies, so I wasn't sure if that was.
Oh, that was compared to the other plans before. There were, I think in 2020, there were balconies on more sides of the building than what we're showing here today. I think they were on the south side. I'm not looking at the plans now. But from what we submitted to the cities, so we submitted the site plan, the exact same plans that we showed to the community, went through the zoning process. They asked us to make some minor changes to the drawing, fill in some gaps so we can get the application accepted and processed.
Okay, well, administration, usually, yeah, you're right. Please don't come back to us this way, public hearings. So I think administration will say it's more substantial than minor changes.
Oh, no, from 2020 to now, substantial changes from what we showed to the public in June of last year to now is like minor changes. So
I see what you're saying.
yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, from 2020, again, I was involved in 2020, a completely different project, completely different building, looks different, different design, different layout, yeah, very different. From what we submitted to the public in June to what we submitted to City of Winnipeg to now, like minor, like small, like changes.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else? Being none? Oh, thanks. Okay, Mr. Woodchuck.
Thank you. I'll be back at the end, I think, for the, yes.
Okay, just checking with the gallery if there's anybody here who's not registered, but who wishes to speak in support of this application. Seeing none, so we'll move on to those registered in opposition. So the first I have is Cynthia Drabo.
Hello there.
Hi. Do I go?
Do you need any pointers? Are you ready to go?
I'm good to go. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Cynthia Drabot. I'm a resident of the Crescentwood area, and I share a back lane with the proposed development. I'm here to put forward my objection to the amendments to the zoning variances for the development in 915 McMillan. I do want to address the lot next door that is for sale, is not part of the development, which we've determined, and it's had trouble selling because of the development going up. So this proposal poses significant risks and challenges to our neighborhood and its residences. While I understand the need for housing development in our community, as someone who professionally works to advocate for social housing, it's crucial that we consider the long-term impacts of our community before making such a significant decision as to allow for the additional 11 variances or amendments. The bigger version of the development is even less visually appealing than the first one. I'm glad that we saw it before and after. However, regardless of the implications of the building's aesthetics, and the developer is making it larger. and taking up more land by making the development different. The increase in size of this building has impacts. When the new zoning variances were posted, I was actually shocked to see what they were, and they didn't really match with what was talked about earlier, so I'll get to that. First of all, I want to talk about backlane congestion and safety. It poses significant risks about increased traffic flow. This development will bring, particularly the use as the back lane as a thoroughfare. So the increased volume of vehicles will, of course, could create dangerous conditions for residents, particularly pedestrians, cyclists, kids walking to school. School was mentioned, there's one close by. The current back lane is not designed to handle heavy traffic or to be an access point for commercial and residential building of this size. It's primarily used for garbage collection, occasional resident traffic. These new variants, if these new variances are approved, we can anticipate a dramatic increase in traffic that will include not only residents, but also visitors, service vehicles, delivery trucks, and so on. The influx will place an enormous strain on our back lane that is not set up for this amount of traffic. And in fact, it has only been cleared once this winter, and it's very difficult to drive down. And in here, I'm referring to the variances in 2B that were posted about accessory commercial use, street parking spaces accessed directly from an adjacent lane instead of a driveway. So the idea of using the back lane instead of a driveway, and then insufficient buffering of parking or having a loading area. Another challenge with the back lane where the development is being built is that you can't turn left out of the back lane onto Stafford because of traffic congestion on Stafford. So you can turn left, but you really can't most of the time. So this is the result of, everybody will then use the back lane to exit from their parking in the back. And it's an entire back lane, an entire block. And so even now, an example is if I'm coming out of my back lane and I'm trying to exit onto Stafford and someone's pulling in off Stafford, I have to physically reverse my vehicle to let them get into the lane. So it's very tight as it is now. So what happens when the building's there with entry and exit from the parking at the rear on the back lane, loading, garbage bins happening within that 10 feet of space that's being allowed. Number two, I want to talk about parking and density of the area. We're a community of single family, multi-unit structures and large apartment blocks already. It's great. But the congestion of the area and the appropriate parking should be based on what already exists. The development borders Stafford has been talked about, a street that is a main artery. Parking is never available or possible on that street. The street to the south is Corden, whose residents already park on McMillan, the street that it's being done on. The street to the north is Dorchester, which is where the residents from Grosvenor, so the street past that, already park. There are also a variety of businesses and shops in the community within a 2-block radius that need parking to be available for their businesses. So the parking needs and their ripple effects with only 15 parking spots for 30 units and commercial space with no visitor parking can be highly problematic. 3, I want to talk about green space and use of land. The proposed development lacks sufficient green space around the perimeter of the building. It's basically with these new amendments, building out to the sidewalks, the back lane, creating a concrete jungle on those 3 lots. I'll refer to the amendments that were posted. The front yard, instead of being 20 feet, will be 5 feet. The west side yard, instead of 20 feet, will be 3 feet. The rear yard, where we're having all that congestion in the back lane, instead of 25, will be 10 feet. And the lot sizes have been decreased from 800 per square feet as at the smallest to 400, creating a 50% smaller unit, trying to increase profit, but not putting much infrastructure in place to create more units. This building, if allowed to go to these extremes, will not allow for changes when they come up during the building process. I'm part of building a building. I know changes come, and they come many, and that was referred to already by the builder himself. So, even an example, in the picture you see, there's 2 pretty garbage bins in the back lane. Those will never, I know the size of them, I'm using them myself. They will never fit 30 units of garbage and commercial space in them. So then where do they go when you don't have any room left on the property? 4, developer consultation and confidence in the developer. Community development is something that is very important to me because it involves community members coming together to take collective action to a change and develop solutions together. That is why we are here today. At the core, though, of community development is community engagement. There has been 0 community engagement on this project. I am not sure what they were talking about. I live right there, never heard about it. Nobody else I know heard about it. Since that time, the houses on the 3 lots were vacated by the developer. All the beautiful trees were taken down. These houses stood vacant for the next 3 years while the developer did nothing to preserve the property and has made no effort to connect with the community. Just over a year ago, we woke up to the 3 houses being torn down to make way for the project that was approved in 2020. It was disappointing to see no consciousness showed on this project. Nothing was preserved. Everything went to the landfill, and the building has increased without consideration of the neighborhood or the environment. Also worth mentioning is that when the houses were being demolished, on the lots, electrical wires were loosened and were hanging across the back lane. When I spoke to one of the workers, they told me it was not their issue. My neighbors got up on ladders, hung yellow caution tape on the wires as it took months for them to raise them back. Nobody cared. The way in which this project has moved forward thus far is not giving me confidence in the developer and makes me question their intentions. As far as consultation goes, even the process for opposing this variance is challenging. From a city perspective, there are many people that I know from the community that just couldn't figure out how to do that, and that's the reality of technology and systems. In closing, it's no secret that developers often build their projects in a way that maximizes profit, and this is often at the expense of the communities they build in. We must prioritize the voices of residents and businesses ahead of the financial interests of one developer. Expanding the size of this project will decrease the size of living space for future tenants, is at the personal gain of the developer, not concerned for who will live there and who lives in the neighborhood.
I'm sorry, we really frown upon, saying things about the other party, or you assume, or could be.
Yeah.
So try not to impugn what they're thinking, what they're doing.
Okay, then what I will say is I would invite the developer, John and Corinne, to come down and see the back lane in person. It's very different than it looks in the winter than it is in the summer pictures. But Corinne's studying abroad, so I don't know that that's possible. I ask you to reject these zoning amendments and consider the long-term effects on the neighborhood. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Questions?
I guess I'll pose a few questions. One, I wanted you to talk about the issue you raised with respect to garbage. I also wanted you to reflect on your comments about housing, and community development.
Yeah.
Appreciate them.
Yeah.
And reflect on the timeline of seeing sort of the vacancy in the neighborhood to now.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that in part, so if you have nothing more to say, that's fine.
Yeah.
But reflect on the garbage plan first.
The lots were left vacant for several years. We had, the place was being dismantled, right? Over those 3 years, like boards were being taken and things were being taken. And so the property itself wasn't being watched or taken care of. When it did come down and all the stuff came down, nothing was maintained while the lot was vacant either, right? So there was a lot of just not taking care of the lot and it growing high and having to be, we had to like worry about doing something with it. But the garbage piece is just that the building is built out to the edges of all the property. And I'm in the middle of building a building. And I know that garbage disposal is a big thing and it's never considered in the initial plans. So when you don't have any room to add the garbage, like those 2 bins will not be enough for what's needed for a building that size. So that's just one example of when you build a building out that far and you need to make changes, then you have no place to make it.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah.
Coming down to City Hall today.
Any further questions? No, but we'll follow administration on some of the questions.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Next up, we have Barry Ottenbright. And councillors, before you, you have a map that was submitted by Barry, and he's also going to,
Are we ready for this?
absolutely, any
Administration every day, but we like them.
I'm technologically challenged here, so hopefully I'll be able to do this.
Good night, Matt. Yeah.
Oh, good morning.
Great.
My name is Barry Underbright and I reside at 897 McMillan Avenue in the same block as the proposed development. I've lived in the neighborhood for 34 years. Winnipeg is fortunate to have some of the finest historic communities in the country, and I consider McMillan Avenue to be one of the best in the city. I'm also an architect, and I recently retired from professional practice 24 days ago.
Wow.
No, we're all jealous.
That said, the focus of my work over the last 10 years has been multifamily residential projects in Winnipeg and across Western Canada, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. And I hope to bring some of that knowledge to this hearing today. I'm speaking here in opposition to the application of the proposed variances for 915 McMillan Avenue development. And here are my concerns and issues. My primary concern with the development is the proposed development density, specifically variance item 1E, the decision and condition statement that proposes a lot area of 400 square feet per unit instead of 800 square feet per unit. That single little item effectively doubles the density of that site.
We haven't, I think that just for information, I don't mean to interrupt.
But a little detail. Go ahead.
It just, what's before us today is a zoning agreement amendment.
Right.
And we will hear variances, but I want to make clear what's before us today. When people, and I can make clear later in comments and questions, but I want folks to know, and I'm sure folks do, that it's a zoning agreement amendment today, not necessarily variances. I'll ask the public service later, and I apologize, I'm not eating into your time, Mr. Chair, I'm not eating into his time, I want to clarify. I will ask the public service a question that later on, the differences, and then also ask that of the clerk. Of the differences between when we have a hearing that has variances before us, which we typically do, and when we have zoning. So I apologize for the interruption. I just, it's a point of information, Mr. Chair.
Good point. Let's just stay on this for a bit. As I'm listening, I have to figure this out again too. So what we're talking about is variances over here, zoning agreements over here. I guess my question to the administration is, does not the zoning agreement change variances? Like the lot size, so like, are they kind of together?
It's the whole development is of course together. It's a process issue, however, because it's been more than 2 years since community committee last approved the variances. And per the development procedures bylaw, the new variances our director decided. So they're what we call C variances, which don't come back because it's been more than 2 years. If it were within 2 years, it'd be here today. Those variances are separate. decision. But what does come to committee is a zoning agreement amendment, because that is always considered by committee and then council.
Zoning agreement amendment. So very, I heard some, in those amendments, aren't there some changes to the variance?
There's some changes to the variances, yeah.
2, 3, 4 years ago.
I didn't hear the last part.
We've approved this before,
Yeah, it was
but
approved.
now it can change, the variance can change.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna approve those now, that we did before?
That's correct. They're not on the agenda today because they're a director decision, which has been approved and is in the middle of the appeal period right now, receiving appeals.
So
It can be appealed.
Appeal the variance,
Yes.
separately.
Yes.
So today, specifically, what are we here for?
To consider the zoning agreement amendment because the plans are substantially different from last time and thus doesn't meet the clause.
So the variance, yeah, lot coverage, lot wide width.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we'll try to teeter through this. It's a little complicated. The bottom line of the variances, that kind of stuff, there will be an appeal process for that, which we get separately. Okay. Try that, but again, try your best to stay on target, but we understand how you're following.
Yeah, it doesn't change my concern. My concern is with the density. And the terminology that's typically used in multifamily developments is units per acre. And that's something that I'm more familiar with. And I think it's quite honestly a little more understandable to the general public as well. So the current design proposes 30 residential units plus 2 commercial units for a total of 32 units on the site. This works out to a development density of 116 units per acre on this site. This is very high density, particularly for an infill project in a predominantly single family residential neighborhood. So I was having trouble understanding where the precedent for this type of density, for this type of neighborhood originated. So I took it onto myself to do a little bit of an analysis, which you see the results here. Pictures worth 1,000 words. To get a better understanding of what it is that's in our neighborhood, which is a very beautiful neighborhood now that includes a good well as historic projects that form part of the fabric of our community. So the analysis included the area bounded by Corden Avenue to the south, Grosvenor to the north, Wentworth and Harrow Streets to the east and west respectively. 16 multifamily residential properties were identified, including 12 newer developments completed under recent zoning bylaw requirements and 4 historic multifamily buildings completed in the early 1900s. Again, these were included for reference as they fall within the analysis area and are an integral part of the neighborhood fabric, keeping in mind that these historic sites were done 110 years ago, and I'm sure that the parking requirements 110 years ago were dramatically different than they are today. The areas here that are highlighted in color are developments that include 4 or more units in each of those developments, with the exception of 3 of the properties immediately north of the 915 McMillan site on Dorchester, which have 3 units each. But I included them because they have that immediate adjacency to the development site. So if you look at the summary here on the table on the side, if you go through those 12 newer projects, the density ranges from 18 units per acre to 57 units per acre. The bulk of them are 3-story buildings. There's 1 2-story building on Dorchester. There's 2 4-story buildings on Stafford, which is the newer one on the corner of McMillan and Stafford, and then the one block up on Dorchester and Stafford. The historic buildings include 195 Wentworth, which is at the end of the block, which has 39 units per acre. 161 Stafford, which is on the corner of Stafford and Grosvenor, which is commercial and residential development, 56 units per acre. 183 Harrow, which is kind of on the upper northwest corner of our analysis area, which is 75 units per acre. And the The last one is 890 McMillan, which is down the street right at the corner of McMillan and Wentworth, which is 78 units per acre. Again, keep in mind that these historic sites wouldn't have had the same zoning requirements in terms of setbacks, parking requirements, et cetera. So they would have been developed in a completely different era. So based on this analysis, it seems to me that the appropriate density for the 915 McMillan site, be consistent with the other similar developments in the area, should be in the range of 50 to 60 units per acre, 3 stories ideally, 50% of what they're proposing in terms of the density. That's all I'm going to say about density right now. I can answer some further questions later on. My other concerns were under the Appendix A, Ford and Osborne Urban Design Review, the internal worksheet. There are a number of items there that are incorrectly indicated as being compliant, and they quite honestly aren't. The first one is item number 16, which is residential development should take into consideration light view, privacy of adjacent buildings and the area. It's shown as being compliant right now, so this is incorrect. A simple sun and shade diagram of the proposed development would show significant impact of access to natural light on both the properties to the north as well as to the west. On the privacy side, you now have 12 units with balconies facing directly into the neighboring property to the west. I don't see how that addresses any privacy issues whatsoever. Who would feel comfortable with 12 units with their primary living spaces looking into the side of your home or into your backyard? Another one that I think is incorrectly shown as being compliant is the residential, is item number 18, which is residential development should ensure the use of building design elements that are consistent with the surrounding properties, including materials, finishing, signage, placement of windows and doors, height of massing buildings. The comments here indicate that the proposed design takes cues from the existing multifamily residential development using varied roof lines, balconies, articulated windows, a variety of brick veneer, cement panels. What they've done is they use siding and cement board, which is used anywhere in the city. There is no queue, not one single queue from the neighborhood, which is one of the richest, some of the most beautiful historic homes are in this neighborhood. There's no shingles, there's no reference to any kind of design element whatsoever. I'm going to hold back my architectural review comments because, quite honestly, I believe this is not a completed design by any means. What this is an exercise in maximizing the density of a building on that site. It doesn't take into consideration the privacy, natural light, or the aesthetic issues of the neighborhood. In terms of articulation, there's a number of other items, less important ones in this appendix, where they talk about articulation of windows. I don't know what articulation means in terms of this definition, but this development has one window type, and it's used exactly the same way on all 4 elevations. There's no articulation. There's nothing to demonstrate any kind of architectural thought. There's no joy. There's no life in the design of this building. And finally, I attended the meeting online presentation held on June 12th, 2024. The presentation consisted of a single presenter, Corinne. There was no developer, no design team, advising that development had been increased from 24 to 30 units, a cursory review of the site plan and building elements. The presenter was not very well informed. He could not speak to the zoning variances that would be pursuing with this updated design, and then were completely unfamiliar with the original public hearings process from 2020, 2021. The meeting lasted a total of exactly 30 minutes, at which the Zoom meeting terminated in the middle of one of the participants' questions. In a nutshell, there was very little information shared and no opportunity whatsoever for feedback. I know that public consultation is not a requirement. It should be. developments like this. And,
Are you almost done, sir? Your beep time.
okay,
A minute or so?
one minute.
Go ahead, sir.
A proper, and I've been involved in dozens of public consultation process. A meaningful public consultation process is one that informs the design. The design that you present at the initial meeting with the community rarely looks like the design that is submitted when you get to this stage of the process. If it had been any kind of meaningful consultation, the design that was presented last year would look different than it is now. And the proof is in the pudding, because what was presented on June 24th last year is exactly the same as what was submitted for this application today. All due respect to John.
This is the committee.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else?
Nope.
Sir? No, you got the votes? Anybody have any questions? Nope, not seeing any. Very good presentation. Thank you. Next.
Next up, we have Kenton Larson.
Okay,
I'm sure.
can I take a 2-minute?
We need 2 minutes.
2-minute.
2 minutes.
He
Yeah.
might be loading up.
Yeah,
And
you
I'll
want
be
to
back.
get yourself ready and we'll get here to the.
How do I'm sure.
So
Pretty good.
just.
All right, sir, you're back online. You're up. Go ahead, just your name, the name's up there, but for the record, your name, address, and we'll give you your 10 minutes.
Sure, I'm Kenton Larson. I live on the same block of McMillan Avenue as the proposed development. I've lived there for over 20 years. I live 3 houses down from the proposed development. And the last time I was here speaking on this issue, we've spoken on this issue many times. It's a blur, but I think the last time that we were here, I appealed to the developer. I had an appeal for the developer, and I said, like, it would be nice if you would stop saying the words that you just want people to hear and actually demonstrate those things to us, like live by those words. Unfortunately, over the past 4 years, that has not been the case. Like if I have a theme here, the theme is dereliction of duty to the community that the neighborhood expects, and the dereliction of the property itself, as I will show. We got this flyer, and I'll have something to say about the public or the community feedback, which I agree with the previous presenter that it was not good. But when we got this flyer, it said, based on received feedback, a revised proposal has been made for this exciting new development, and we welcome your thoughts. And you'll notice the passive voice, where did you get the feedback from? Because it certainly wasn't any member of the community. It wasn't any neighbors that I'm aware of, because nobody said, I've been to every hearing. Nobody at any of the hearings said, even those in support didn't say, could you make the building larger? Could you add a story? Could you increase the number of apartment units? Could you increase the commercial space? Could we have 15 parking spots for 60 expected tenants at street level? Like, this is an opportunity we've got here to create something great, and the neighbors would love to be a part of that opportunity. But this structure, once again, it does not respect the context, look, space, and surrounding properties of the neighborhood in which it's intended to be built. Our environment impacts our entire lives, our relationships with our neighbors, and even how we move around. And I just want to remind people, these were the initial, in the Cordon plans, this showed what things were supposed to look like north of Cordon. And with all of the big developments we now have in the area, it's so easy to forget that this is not the way it's always been, nor was it ever the way that it was intended to be. I also want to point out that the words in the Cordon plan that came up, there's a workshop, and they asked people to brainstorm the words about what people like about our neighborhood. They said urban forest, mature trees, safety, green space, pedestrian friendly, character. And we've seen trees featured prominently in the developer's illustration, but this is the reality of it on the ground. This is the first, our neighborhood was not in decline until the developer got its hands on it, and then it started to decline. This is the first thing that the developer did. So it clear cut all trees, big and small, got removed. It got rid of this, probably the nicest tree in the neighborhood. That's a mature tree. and you'll see that it's also cut down in an unprofessional way. Like everything that happens just is lacking in professionalism. This tree sat like this through that back shed for well over a month. When it was finally extracted from the shed, it lay there for another couple of months. Like there just is no deference at all to the community in which it is doing business. I also want to point out that it was the home to the neighborhood owl as well. That's great. So a shout out to the owl. So here's the sad reality of living next door to this site. As I say, the neighborhood was not in decline until the developer got his hands on it. I am the trash manager for this property, the involuntary volunteer. Like, I don't want to pick it up, but I don't see anybody else doing it. And it's been bags and bags of it, I have to say. Bags and bags of trash that I'm picking up for a for-profit enterprise. I just want to point out, which just makes it even worse. There's nobody to call. There's nobody to take responsibility for it. And really, none of us want to live next door to big piles of garbage. So as you can see, in terms of safety issues, that's the beginning of an encampment of one of more, there's more than one. There's probably 3 encampments that moved in. There's regular breaches, as you can see in that other shot. The neighbors called the fire service multiple times. We had fire set in the front and backyards, and the police service has attended to the properties multiple times. It's always us neighbors coordinating it. I've never seen a developer show up and go, hey, what's going on here? You know, like I think it goes beyond what a community should be expected to endure when it comes down to like, maybe I'll wake up and my house will be on fire today. Okay, so that's the dereliction that we're talking about. Under this developer's watch, our neighborhood became the very picture of derelict properties in the city. Manitoba Premier wants to expropriate derelict buildings and turn them into social housing. So this is so unfortunate that it got to this point. But at the same time, I do appreciate that this article ran because I think we learned something about the developer here. This is what it takes to get the developer to do something. It's the fear of having its property taken away, because 9 days after this article ran, that only then is when the developer took some action, even after I spoke with who I believe is still the developer. I'm not sure actually. But I even spoke to that person. That person just offered excuses, and but it took that article for something to actually happen. Today, this is an article written by Mr. Winthrop in the Winnipeg Free Press, and he says in the article, professional planners require active listening to determine the root issues underlying people's opinions of proposed changes, and taking steps to facilitate, mediate, and negotiate to build consensus among stakeholders. The developer delivered the flyer that I showed earlier to, I think, a single block of McMillan, and it's true that the neighbors on Dorchester, I believe, none has told me that they received it or were aware of this. I attended both of the online meetings in which nothing like this was demonstrated. I agree with the prior presenter that we felt bad for the person doing the presentation, because I mean, it looked like a person who has not been briefed on what it is that they're talking about. And so they couldn't answer even the simplest question, like who owns the property? Like can't answer, like was unaware of prior public hearings. And yes, and both meetings crashed because they were using the free version of Zoom and never came back. So mid question was like game over, yeah, done. So, and I want to point out 4 years since the last time we were here, and this is the best that the person who says this, that's the best that we're going to get. When a resident on the street emailed to say we need to do better with public consultation, this is the email back. I'm fine with the community consultation that Corinne successfully completed on this matter, but hey, feel free to provide feedback. We're always willing to listen. In fact, this was feedback, and this is not listening. Once again, a neighbor pointed out to the applicant about the balconies, that how close are they to the neighbor next door? This is the email back. It's unfortunate that some members of the public feel that concrete walls and the elimination of open air amenities are needed to ensure existing residents do not see their new neighbors who are increasingly reflective of a multicultural Canadian society. So in the prior article, he says professional planners require active listening to determine the root issues underlying people's opinions, yet without any evidence, he jumps to, well, you must not like immigrants and you must want to hide them away if you don't like my design. I find this one particularly offensive.
I'm leaving. I'm gone personal. Like, we keep going on.
We
and on.
try to-
This is about my professional reputation.
Mr. Chair,
And I've had
we do
enough
try
of
to
being
keep
passed
everybody in.
around. Like, 1 second, stop. 1 second, please, 3
We
minutes.
try to
ago.
keep
Thanks, Sean.
everybody in the room. I'd invite Mr. Winthrop to say, Mr. Chair. There are elements that are skating the line, Mr. Chair, I think.
There are some posts.
It is really a fine line when the city of Winnipeg doesn't require consultation. To then have, which is a policy issue. I think we're all fine, gentlemen. Thank you, Emmanuel. I think we're all fine. He just slammed his book down and we'll experience the full range of emotions during the day. But if we could all just, I think it's also important to recognize that oftentimes there are consultants that represent applicants, and so I think there's some skating to do here, but I appreciate the time and effort that Mr. Larson's put into his presentation. The content, though, is impugning both Corinne and Mr. Winthrop, and that to impugn the intent and to repeatedly say, as has happened in this hearing, that Mr. Winthrop is only in it for the money. I appreciate that people also say, the same thing about politicians, and and that we also, are lawyers. Pick your profession. Architects get called snobs a lot. Not fair. Not fair. But I think we can all stay in the same room. And I think that would be important to do.
We're okay now?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah.
Again, as you see going, we can give you a warning now. You're getting very close to that line.
Well, I got good news for Sherry, and that's I'm about to say something nice about the city.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Rollins. Pardon me. I went to visit Councillor Rollins in her office last week, in the new office, so I'm feeling like we're on a first name basis, but Councillor Rollins, my apologies. I just want to also say the applicant wrote an article in the Winnipeg Free Press that said the city has delayed housing for 60 Winnipeggers. And in the article lists a public engagement that I'm unaware of on June the 5th. So I don't know what that public engagement was, but I just want to bring it to your attention. The two on the 12th are the ones that I'm aware of. I also want to point out that the application that was delivered to the city was deemed incomplete, as we heard earlier. And the city requested revisions to the drawings and variances. None of that information was available to us at that public engagement. So I think that would have been something that would have been nice to see. So I just wanted to say, in conclusion, the plan and design, I think, of this, once again, it's based on non-existent community feedback. The developer, and I'm in the last 10 seconds here. The developer hasn't demonstrated responsibility to the community. It has had 4 years to do better. And these are the exact same things that we, the community and neighbors, pointed out at prior hearings. And I think until such time as he conducts actual consultation in the way he himself says it should be and demonstrates a commitment to be a respectful neighbor, then I have to respectfully ask you to deny this requested amendment to the zoning. Thank you.
Questions? You got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Laura Lamont. All right. Then next we have Bob Cedar.
Hi, my name is Bob Sider. I live directly across the back lane from this proposal. I must admit that what I've written here pertains more to something I should have applied back at a further a meeting in the past. That is it my understanding that the variance has already gone through, that a 4-story structure can be built here? Is that correct?
You can ask the administration that question when it comes out.
Go ahead with, I would appreciate if he went ahead with the presentation. I do think that it is an interesting phenomenon, this hearing, where usually it's a combined hearing. And we look at this as a combined hearing, and it is an issue that has been pointed out where there is an appeal period right now for the variances, not a separate meeting. And then there is a rezoning hearing right now. And so we are in the appeal period. So I would just encourage, folks that came with a presentation today that to let it discuss it. There's policy work to do here always at City Hall. And, but this is, we'll get some words on the record of why this is a bit more of an interesting hearing than normally takes place.
So we'll get to your question. Has the 4-story already been approved? My understanding is there's an appeal going on that. So no.
Okay, thank you.
Period.
For the series. But again, we'll get more clarity at the end of that.
Okay. When does my time start?
Let's say 10 minutes ago. So go right ahead.
Okay, my presentation here is more concerning how this will affect the psychology of myself and my wife as it pertains to this property application. My name is Bob Sider. As I've stated, my wife Colleen and I purchased our dream home in 2011, a 3rd-floor condo, which is presently right across the back lane from the former 3 properties now applying for rezoning. To the north, we had beautiful grand Dutch elm trees reaching out front deck. We could sit there and enjoy coffee and see birds perched not 10 feet away. Because of the plague of the Dutch elm disease, 3 of these irreplaceable trees on our front boulevard and 2 across the street were removed. To add insult to this devastation, a Cinzano cinnamon bun franchise established itself on the corner with its ugly fluorescent light blaring into our bedroom window every night. There used to be a high-end restaurant there. Cinzano's should not have been allowed to occupy this high-quality building. Cinzano's would fit perfectly and is more suited to a strip mall where it would probably do a better trade. You're wondering why I've spoken to that. This is just adding to what's creeping into our neighborhood as to what is being accepted. An example of a new business setting up shop and fitting in seamlessly to its surroundings is Lionetti Clothier, which is located right across the street from the proposed rezoning on Stafford Street. Now, as I look east from my dining room window, which is 4'8", we used to be able to see all the way to the next block and beyond. Because the house next door was raised, the new building put in place, we are now staring at a roof. So the beauty of the front of my place and to the east has gone. To the south used to be 3 viable, old yet gracious family homes. They were robbed from this neighborhood in preparation for this project. They had mature trees, they had backyards, they fit in with the integrity of the neighborhood. Sure, we faced the back lane, but it was a neighborly back lane. It fit the mood, the character of the area. We could sit out on our back deck and feel the sun on our faces. We could see over the rooftops of these 2.5-storied structures. We could even see the roof of St. Ignatius Church on Jesse and Stafford. The back deck was a sanctuary for rest and relaxation. We bought this place not only because of the interior space, but also because of all the ambience and beauty that surrounded us on the outside. This outer space that we cherished and was so integral to our decision to buy here is steadily being eviscerated. What is being proposed here is so depressing for me. Am I going to have to stare at this monstrosity of banality across the back lane while I live here? Our privacy, of course, will also be greatly diminished by those now staring back at us from the 3rd and 4th floors across the way. There seems to be no concern or appreciation of what a unique and comfortable neighborhood this is. The quaint shops, the restaurants, the small entrepreneurial businesses all add to the vibrancy of this community. What is proposed here is a squeezing in of as much of a tax-generating property as you can get away with. There is not one iota of consciousness being expended on even considering the degradation and harm to the integrity of the area. Zoning restrictions are put in place to protect what is considered something worthwhile to protect. A zoning variance should have a very compelling argument in order for the zoning restriction to be overturned. It seems like a joke that there are, 12? I don't know how many variances being changed here. I can only think that the tactic is to bombard those in opposition with as many obstacles as possible so that those opposing will feel grateful if some are rejected. This is the art of the deal. This attitude does not promote compromise, is contrary to working together on a solution for all sides to feel comfortable with, does not consider alternatives, and does not promote respect for others' concerns. It's all or nothing. Let's hope, Mr. Wendrup, my surmise is incorrect and a solution can be reached. Entrepreneurship is a good thing. It is the engine of our society. When this is in lockstep with service to others for the benefit of society, it is a wonderful thing. When it is in lockstep with making as much money as you can with the least amount of energy and thought, then it serves many the entrepreneur and few else. Yes, there are factors that support this development: stopping urban sprawl, a need for more housing, a need to access the federal accelerator fund. You can label those in opposition as NIMBYs, and yes, this may have some merit, but it does not mean that these NIMBYs don't have valid and legitimate concerns that speak to the essence of this unique neighborhood, concerns that carry at least the same amount of weight, and I would argue more, as to those boxes being ticked off as to the merit of the project. The problem with this proposal is that it is so contrary to what this neighborhood is about. This will only accelerate a lessening of the quality of this special place we call our neighborhood. I can see no appreciation in the value of my home if this goes up. I don't need to hear about studies being done that refute this. You only need common sense to tell you that this building will generally attract lesser house pride, a lesser caring, a lesser commitment to the enhancing of the surroundings. The building itself, with the size of the suites, will attract more transients, more traffic, more noise, more garbage, less safety. This will only further enhance the demise of the character of this area. Just as Senseo's cinnamon bun shop would be better suited.
The repeated pointing to a business that is established in the neighborhood. And there's just, and more just direct discussion to Mr. Winthrop in particular. I feel I'm calling a bit of a point of order here. There's thoughtful presentations, but the continual crossing the line of, a business that's not even here to defend themselves, or the impugning of a character, the surmising that someone who would occupy a future home of a type that you can find in the city, I think taken together, I'm just calling a point of order.
Can I clarify this then? How it fits in?
Just be wary the point of order has been raised and that
Yeah,
means
okay.
I have to.
This is my last sentence anyways.
So yeah,
The point being made is that the proposal by Mr. Winthrop may be a good proposal and would work better somewhere else and be very successful. This Cinnamon Place was just an example also of another business that I think would also, it was just pointing out that they were related in some way.
Fair enough. Right.
Yeah, and just in closing, I think the scale is very wrong for this neighborhood, and also when people buy a home, which my wife and I did, we want to have some confidence that the zoning laws are in place to protect the environment around which we have purchased this home. So I think that confidence, we should have a lot of confidence in what the zoning laws already are there to protect. Okay, thank you. My voice was quivery. I apologize for that, but I feel very good, and thank you for letting me present.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Good.
All right.
Laura Lamont has joined via Zoom. If we want to hear from Laura. All right, Laura, if you want to start your video, unmute your microphone. We'll put 10 minutes on the clock for you.
Hi, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yeah.
Great. So just like to start by saying thank you for the opportunity to speak to this development. As Kenton said, we've a group of us of neighbors, sorry, my video isn't working. A group of us as neighbors have been following this for some time, have been following it with concern about, sort of the condition of the houses that were there, and now, what's going to be happening next. So I'm going to start by saying just that I second Cynthia Berry and Kenton's comments and objections. I believe the developer for this project is now Mark Kipnis. It's not Dwell Design anymore. That's what it seems to indicate, and the documents on the city website. Does anybody know if that's correct?
It's not really very on this public hearing, but we can look into that possibly and respond later on.
Yeah, it's just because the initial response that we made for the original design was a completely different developer in that case. So that's just why, to me, that's relevant, is just kind of saying, okay, this is kind of almost a fresh start, but not exactly. So I am going to note that the images in the developer's presentation were taken at very different times, always in summer, sometimes with the houses that previously stood on the lots and sometimes not. I do recall the online consultation in June 2024 because I believe it was my question that was cut off. Didn't really get a lot of answers at that time. I do live down the block on the same side as the lot we're discussing. So just to go back to the images in the developer's presentation, there's an east-facing view included in that, and it is not representative of a typical day. I went outside just after 10 a.m. this morning. I'm at home today, and there are 2 small open spots on the entire block. This block is jammed. I've lived here for, I think, 20 years now. Consistently, the demand for parking has been high. There are 2 apartment blocks, which Barry spoke to at the corner of Wentworth and McMillan. They don't have any assigned parking whatsoever, so those residents have been parking around here for as long as there have been cars, because there's been nowhere else for them to go. I am concerned with the increased number of units from 22 to 30. Of 30 units, my understanding is that none of them are going to be affordable. I did ask this question at the consultation in June, and I didn't get an answer. The answer I got was that there had been no application made to CMHC to cover any kind of affordable housing grants or anything else like that, which came up because of the half funding that has been made available by the federal government. And that to me is astounding. There is a crying need for affordable housing in the city of Winnipeg. I'm asking myself now, if you're living in a 400 square foot studio without parking, is that to me is something that should be an affordable rental? And I have to ask myself what kind of prices we're looking at here, because why are we not having 30 units? Why are not any of them designated as available for lower income people? Because we all know how desperate the housing situation is. To have, again, going back to the presentation, to have a neighborhood score that is very bikeable that is absolutely true in summer. It is not at all true in winter. In winter, the parking is so dense along the blocks that the street is no longer fully cleared, because there's nowhere for the cars to go to while the street is being cleared. So the plows will clear one half of the street, and the other half of the street is sometimes a 6 or 8 inch plateau under the cars, so a car width plateau of packed snow. And that is not something that you can very safely mix bicycles and cars on. There's also the erasure of green space. One of the first things that happened, and this was back in 2020, 2021, was that as the original design was approved at the same committee, or actually the one level up, sorry, the first thing that happened was all the mature trees were cut down. This has actually affected the temperature on the block. And I know that we've lost trees to Dutch elm. It's been an absolute tragedy, but those trees have a cooling effect on the entire block, which affects the livability of any street. And I think, there are programs to help people plant trees. It is encouraged. The city is working on it. And there's a lot of pressure on them, I know. There are not enough trees in the city, and we need to keep the ones we have. One of the things was going back to the increased number of units here is that if this was still being considered as 3 lots, under the 4 as of right federal allowance, that would be 3 buildings, and there would be 12 units. And that would be a much less challenging size for traffic safety, because I absolutely echo everything that Cynthia said about traffic safety and garbage collection. To have a really, really big building taking up the end of the block, which does not allow for that, is going to be a problem. And we have more than one school here. We have 2 schools down Stafford. We have 1 school at 2 schools north of this development on Stafford. So that's Kelvin and St. Mary's, and those students are walking along here all the time. There's St. Ignatius School at Stafford and Corridon. There's École La Vérendrye, which is just down around the corner on Lilac. There's even Earl Grey. There are a lot of schools and there are a lot of students who walk by partly to go to the Starbucks and the Tim Hortons on the corner of Stafford and Corridon, pardon me. And those are not, to have an increase of traffic right there, it inevitably is going to mean that somebody is going to get hit, and it's going to be a young person, and that is totally unnecessary. Finally, my question is, and this goes back to this original development, which is kind of why I've been trying to figure this part out. This was originally 3 lots, and I remember one of the initial questions at the initial hearing about this was, we thought that it was only the cap lot that could be made commercial. So that you could have a cap lot right at the corner where you could do different things according to the Corridon Osborne plan, but the other lots, you had to blend in much more. And I guess my question is, if that's the Corridon Osborne plan, that the cap lots get developed differently, does this mean that if you buy up enough properties in a row, that cap lot principle no longer exists because you're just always going to be combining the lots? Because in my mind, that's an issue that needs to go back to the community, and it needs to be clarified in the Corridon Osborne plan. As we talked about cap lots, but really what we mean is, if you get enough lots together in a row, we can do what we like there. And to me, that really is something that needs to be addressed by community consultations and a wider level than just this one development. So for all these reasons, I ask that the developer's request be denied, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Go on. Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Caroline Trewager.
Yeah, I know. That switch was hard for me too.
Did I do it? No, what was that? Okay, so
Yeah.
There you go. Go ahead.
My name's Caroline, and I live a few houses down from the proposed development on McMillan. Just so you know, this is not, I hate speaking, so I'm sorry if I'm nervous. It's really hard. This development, I'm going to actually skip a lot of this because it's already been said, but what I can offer you are photos of what people have been talking about. The development has been in the works for nearly 5 years, so there's a lot to cover, as you can see from everybody talking, and we're very passionate about it. Today, I'll focus on the safety concerns related to traffic and parking, as congestion in our area has significantly increased during this time. So I kind of walked down the streets to calculate how many cars there are and how many people are living on McMillan. So the back alley between McMillan and Dorchester typically has between 52 to 60 vehicles in it. On McMillan alone, there are between 120 to 160 people living on it. This is a range because It depends on how many renters we bring in. So for instance, I think Corinne mentioned the house that's for sale beside it. That's actually a duplex. And so you can have, there's been up to like 6 people in there. The house beside us is a rental property with two units. And we've had as much as 12 people in there at a time. So, and that can bring 5 cars with it. So it varies quite a bit. And I'd also like to mention that on this street, this isn't single family homes. This is condos. This is triplexes, fourplexes. You know, we are large apartment buildings. We are well represented when it comes to that. And it's owners and renters. We live together. It's a community. It's great. The large apartment buildings, we have 890 McMillan. These are all in blue, and these have been around for over 100 years, I'm sure. 890 McMillan, it's on the same block. It has 22 apartments. And now I counted the little buttons. 847 McMillan and 195 Wentworth. It's one building, but it has 2 addresses. It has 16 apartments, and then 915 Gordon Avenue has 28 apartments. None of these have parking. They're all street parking, or they have to they'll rent from either the residents or commercial properties. Then there's the proposed developments, which are highlighted in orange. There's 915 McMillan has 30 residential units and 2 commercial units and 15 parking spots. And 850 McMillan, which is currently being proposed. It's a rental property right now. It's a house. It's going to have 9 units and 5 parking stalls. So that's all crowded into this little area. And this doesn't account for any of the other developments, both completed and proposed within the 2 to 3 block radius of this proposed development. So this is the alley, and this is what people are talking about. Photo 1, it looks towards Stafford and the proposed development at 915 McMillan. Photo 2 looks toward Wentworth. So the photos highlight several key issues. Snow buildup is a major problem during an average winter, as properties have nowhere to store excess snow, leading to rapid accumulation in the alley. On cold winter days, residents without parking often park in the alley. They just park in the alley and plug the car in. And so you have to try to get around them. And we've all accepted that. That's what this neighborhood's about. And then the alley is already narrow for maneuvering. If you add snow, garbage, and recycling bins, some properties have multiple bins due to the number of units. It becomes even tighter. In photo 1, near the proposed 915 McMillan Avenue, the spring melt creates a large water buildup from Stafford to the alley's midpoint. This leak can persist for weeks, trapping cars and requiring neighbors to clear blockage manually. These issues illustrate the existing strain on the alley, raising concerns about how additional development will impact traffic and accessibility. This is the illustration, and then this is the actual photo of Stafford. This is really what we see. So the developer's illustration doesn't reflect reality. It represents wide streets and sidewalks, ample parking, and lush greenery, but that's not the true picture. The scale of and perspective of the surrounding buildings are also inaccurate. The photo shows the real Stafford Avenue. The street and sidewalk are much narrower than depicted. Any greenery placed close to the road and sidewalk, it won't survive. It's just, there's too many cars and dirt. Stafford has become a heavily traveled road, making it increasingly dangerous. This is the side. The proposed development in 915 McMillan includes 30 units housing approximately 60 people. This is the developer's estimate. 2 commercial units. I'm not sure why we're even building commercial units anymore. Since COVID, demand for these brick and mortar retail and office spaces have declined. Gordon, Stafford, and Grover already have many vacant commercial spaces for lease. A lack of parking has forced some businesses to leave. For example, Gravity Lingerie, who was at 252 Stafford, they relocated because they had insufficient customer parking. So we're losing businesses. And there's only 15 parking spots despite the potential for 40 to 60 resident vehicles plus commercial and customer parking needs. The key issues are parking congestion. The back alley and McMillan's front street are already at capacity. This development could add 40 to 60 more cars, worsening the issue and causing frustration and more accidents.
traffic congestion. Over the past 2 years, traffic has increased significantly due to new developments and more vehicles traveling on Corydon and Stafford and Grosvenor. Obstructed sightlines. The proposed development includes 2 trees near the alley entrance from Stafford, further blocking visibility, speeding and cut through traffic. Drivers bypass congestion by cutting through McMillan, Dorchester, and the alley, often at high speeds to beat traffic onto Grosvenor or to Corydon. With limited space and unexpected obstacles, the situation becomes even more hazardous. Increasing accidents. Residents have seen and heard more collisions, including vehicle on vehicle, vehicle on bike, vehicle on pedestrian, vehicle on building. The Grove was hit by a vehicle, and vehicle on animal incidents. And that one to me is the worst, when I see cars just hit the animals and they just keep driving. Final thoughts. That's actually the front street. That's our parking. There is no parking. And you can see with the snow, it even gets more compact. And this is a mild winter. Imagine what it's like when it really builds up. I live here, I take the bus, I walk, I bike to work and to do my errands. I see that most people rely on their cars in this area. They're not doing these things. The new bus routes coming in July won't increase bus ridership. For me and others who ride regularly on the same route, our commute times will increase from 40 minutes to an hour. Many have said they'll start using their cars. They're not going to do what they're doing now. I see firsthand the congestion and safety issues caused by these developments and the increased traffic on Stafford, Grosvenor, and Corydon. Lack of parking continues to be a major issue. This is already a high-density neighborhood with significant congestion. There are 3 large structures currently in the planning stages, and many more have gone on Grosvenor in the past 4 years. Safety concerns and rising accidents are a reality, not just a possibility. The developers' illustrations fail to show the true scale of what's happening, and they don't reflect our narrower streets, existing traffic and parking challenges, or the actual number or size of the structures around it. No 2 streets in this neighborhood are the same, and they shouldn't be treated that way. Yet over the past 5 years, we've seen an onslaught of large developments that have disregarded the needs, safety, and quality of life of the people who actually live here. Too often, profit is prioritized over people and community, but we've never needed stronger communities more than now. Perhaps it's time for the city to reevaluate this area, to take into account the volume of development that has already happened, to listen to the people who live here, and to shift the focus away from unchecked expansion and back to the well-being of the community itself. Smart growth isn't just about today, it's about creating a sustainable, livable community and the city in the city that works for both current and future residents. Building responsibility isn't about maximizing square footage on every lot. It's about balancing development with sustainability, livability, and long-term success. I understand that development is necessary, but there is a way to build that respects the character of a community, the people who live there, and the environment. The city is big, and there are areas where larger apartment buildings make sense, where they can be integrated without compromising existing neighborhoods. The goal should be progress that benefits everyone, not just now, but for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. You did a great job.
Next, we have Marla Lewis.
Carla, you're up. You got there.
Right. I don't think I'm catchy anymore.
Marla, so your name and address, and we'll give you your 10 minutes
Yeah, thank you.
when you're ready.
Here's Bumpus.
I had pink eye last week. It was a low moment.
That's a very.
I love to read minds.
Oh, no.
Pink eye.
Good morning. I'm Marla Lewis. I live directly behind, or not quite directly behind, the back alley and one over from the proposed development. I was one of those people who had trouble registering, so I didn't prepare a lot, so I won't take up your 10 minutes. My wife Cynthia basically spoke for both of us and I just want to reiterate for me, the number of units is kind of preposterous as far as how many people are going to be coming back and forth out of the back of the building, creating a lot of havoc, congestion, again, the ability to turn left onto Stafford is near impossibility as it is. So it will be backing people up and causing people to use our back lane as a thoroughfare. I love seeing how many people our community is a nice little neighborhood, and I love seeing all of these people here because everyone's very passionate about the neighborhood. We use our back porch and sit and have coffee, and you know, as they spoke about the lovely tree that came down, unfortunately that's no longer there for the shade and the ambiance. I'm a kid that came from growing up in the country and moved to that dense area in the city, and for me this was like the nicest, closest, second best thing, having all of these trees and everything around. Unfortunately, having this large monstrosity of a concrete building behind us isn't that effect, and it won't be that effect anymore. But we do welcome new neighbors, and we welcome all sorts of people from different walks of life. But that is a lot of them, and all of those people will have cars. And like everyone else has said, there is just not the space for it. There is not parking on Dorchester nor McMillan, and it's impossible for people to park on Stafford. So I don't know where cars will go. I'm guessing that people will be parking temporarily in our parking spots, and that will put us out, and we'll be having to call a tow truck. And I just don't foresee that as being even reasonable. Having everyone come together from our neighborhood, even this morning, I was outside before coming to work. I saw Kenton, and I was digging through the ice trying to start the water flow, and it's, you know, you got to get those rivers going, and here I am. And it's a nice community. We meet back there, we talk, we have moments, Sam, and we have time together and chat in the back alley. This back alley, I mean, it's a community, right? And that's what creates that nice sense of community, is talking to our neighbors. And when we're going to be bombarded, trying to talk to our neighbors as a thoroughfare is going through from Wentworth to the new building, because of all of those cars, it's concerning. We have pets, we have kids walking past, and there's a lot of people, like was mentioned, use it currently as a thoroughfare. It will only get worse. So I just wanted to state that I am strongly opposed to this. Keeping our neighborhood as more of a neighborhood and green space and community is welcoming, and that is welcoming. Like I said, I want to welcome people coming in, but within reason and having been consulted. There was mentioned that there was a consultation in June. No one on Dorchester received those notices. We did not. As someone who's out there chiseling the ice and all of that stuff, we would have been there had we been invited to it. So, yeah. Anyway, I am opposed to it, and thank you for your time.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
All right, next we have Sam Gerbasi.
You have the help?
Hello.
I'll be quick. My name is Sam Gerbasi. I live at 900 Dorchester Avenue. I'm a couple of houses east of the development on the back lane. I've lived in this house for the last 24 years, and I've lived in the neighborhood for the last 40 years. In that time, I've owned 3 houses and rented 3 apartments, all in this neighborhood. It has been a very troubled 13 years or so since the 3 houses were sold to a speculator. It has been a long and difficult time for the neighborhood since then. From watching the family-owned houses turn into rentals, then abandoned for a short time, then rentals again, then they were evicted, and the houses were completely abandoned and disconnected. They were left to rot, to be made into encampments, and a community hazard. Finally, in the past year, demolition and a mud field is left. We have been through a community committee hearing with councillors siding with the community, and I think it was 63-6 with 63 supporters and 6 opposed to the previous hearing in 20 or 21, whenever it was, only for it to be successfully appealed with a design that was deemed too large for the block by the community committee originally. Now, we're looking at a design that does not have the stepped back frontage. That was a key design element that the owner and city planners had agreed to. I remember in the community committee hearing back then that the plan had gone back and forth to the planners from, they had a consultation hearing, and the plan went back and forth a few times, and the frontage, which is a major issue, having the step back frontage, as the Gordon Osborne plan illustrates online, that you need to conform the new development with the existing neighborhood, and this one completely doesn't. And another key element design was having the 4 stories only on the old corner lot. So the first 33 feet had 4 stories, and that the planners had approved and were pushing for in the last hearing, that was reasonable, because the other 2 lots only had 3 stories. So, and it was kind of a gradual conformity with the rest of the block. So the city planners had worked with the architects to come up with a plan that at least attempted to comply with the Gordon Osborne development guidelines. This new design makes no effort to comply with the planning guidelines. This is a step way too far outside of these guidelines. The community should not be the ones to suffer a poorly planned building designed to be way outside of the guidelines for the sole reason that for making more money on poor planning, nothing else. That's business. Business is to make money. That's it. We'll leave it there.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Cheers.
So those are all the folks in opposition that I have had registered. I'll just check with the gallery if there's anyone else here who wishes to speak in opposition to this application. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak for information? Seeing none, Mr. Chairperson.
Okay, we'll have the applicant come back.
Unless you have questions for the administration first.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So there is, I want to thank everyone coming to talk today, but to the public admin, there is a lot of history on this file, in particular this community committee, where, and this is a matter of public record, and so I, maintain my open mind for the record, but I recall voting against what I think I did call an awful example of faux heritage at the final act of this back in, I want to say 21, which was at council. This I think it's important to get on the record the information and the bylaw that allows for the director to consider variances separate and apart, because it is a unique public hearing that way, insofar as we don't have the variances before us right now. And what we have is the zoning of a site that was controversial back in 2020, 2021 window. I believe it was a 2020 window though. And so can you talk a bit to that law, just as the first question? So the ZAAs, and I'll ask the clerks too to weigh in on that. But first, the public service through Mr. Ross.
Sure. So the zoning agreement amendment is required, as I think everyone is aware now, to remove this past substantial conformance with plans condition that was on the zoning agreement last time, and which was approved when the rezoning subdivision was approved by council in 2021. So that will always come back to committee if amended and then council for approval because it's a zoning, it's part of it's zoning. The variances also come back to committee if they're applied for within 2 years of committee's past decision with respect to variances on the property. In this case, because more than 2 years passed, they become C. The variance becomes a C type, which is director approved with chance of appeal. However, because the variance, which we had to approve, being the director, our department, is predicated on approval of the zoning agreement because the plans are different and the plans cannot be different unless the committee here in council approves them to be different than 2021. There is a condition on the variance we put on there, so it does not come into force and effect unless this is approved. So they're tied together in that way. So although we support, the public service supports both the zoning agreement amendment and the variance because both comply with policy and zoning for this property in the Corridon area. We can't, no one can actually approve the variance unless and until this zoning agreement is approved, if that makes sense.
So to the clerks, I think when people express concern, as we often hear, that this is a frustrating place to navigate City Hall. To the clerks, a little bit more complicated this is with a variance period open right now for appeal. Typically, we can ask, have you received any, right? And you don't know. So I guess, have you received any? And then could you consider why the clerks may have pointed out this is a path that is less certain for the public, given one of your key performance indicators in clerks is to keep democracy rolling, so to speak, and make sure there's that engagement.
Yes, so a variance has been approved, C variance on this item. There is currently an appeal window open, which expires at 4:30 today. To my knowledge, we have not received any appeals pertaining to that variance, but like I mentioned, the deadline is today at 4:30.
Okay, next question. So in the report, you do talk about the low-rise mixed-use area B of the Corridon Osborne plan, and you talk about the relevant properties. And then you talk about the interplay with both that low-rise and the medium-density residential area. You've made choices, policy choices here. Can you talk about them, namely on page 10, in light of what you heard? Specifically, I'll point out, let's say, two speakers that spoke to sustainability, and then Mr. Gervasi's comments, let's just say.
With respect to it's straddling two policy areas?
That's right.
So the one thing that's required with a development on this property because of its straddling two policy areas is that any commercial component of the building must be contained within the low-rise mixed-use area B portion of the site, which is the part closest to Stafford, which was done by design of both last time and this time. In terms of the height, 4 stories, it's true that last time there was a 3-story portion closer to the interior side yard. And it's not, that was done last time, not specifically required under policy and zoning because the consolidation of the property creates a corner property for the whole lot. And even in the medium density residential area, which is the interior part of this property, once you're a corner property, you can go up to 4 stories. So there's nothing non-compliant with the application to do 4 stories straight across.
Last time, I believe I would have found in the report, though, a consideration of sort of the collaboration between the design process and the community consideration for the mixed zoning on the property. I'll have to go back, but I think part of that design was informed by a consultation. Is that possible?
It's possible. I wasn't the planner who handled the last report in 2021. It's very possible. However, also the Cordon plan seeks developers to provide commercial on the ground floor in the low-rise mixed-use area, which against Stafford, and for that portion only. So if the developer that time or this time provided that, it could very well be because it's reflected in policy. And we did recommend and understand that the developer did some community consultation this time, but that's our understanding, and that is detailed a little bit in the variance report. But the applicant can speak to that.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to speak to in the question to the consultation.
That's true. Yes, so that's correct. Yeah.
I wasn't asking to speak to the, no, I disagree with what's before us because there is consideration in the report on page 10 and 11 for the design. That is correct. But in terms of the rezoning, the public service absolutely does have consideration of the Cordon Osborne plan and does a discussion around the heights. So with respect to the design, can you, in another comment that was made today was, what is essentially your perspective or the public service perspective on articulation and how it meets the Cordon plan? And I'll leave it at that as a question.
Sure. Just pulling up the plans just so I can refer to
page 11. You do comment on it just to help you out a bit.
So the articulation of the building facing McMillan Avenue, the design approach has changed to be a bit more of a cohesive architectural design. However, the step backs are there still. There is a 45-degree angular view from 909, I think it is McMillan, the house that's beside this property, towards McMillan, which was a request of the public service in 2021 and was this time as well, and it's provided.
Okay. I think that is the last question I have, other than I do want in the report, yeah.
So I'll just ask you a question on the parking. In the previous one, the parking was going to be underground.
Right.
And now, so because I mean, there has been quite a lot of changes within the community. So I can understand the concern regarding parking as much as we think everyone's gonna take the bus and stuff. It's just not kind of the reality. So in terms of, is there a loss to parking more in the new proposal than in the last proposal?
Thank you, Counselor. Just give me one second here. Is there a loss to parking? I'd have to go back to the 2021 plans to answer that question fully for you, Counselor. We view the current application in front of us on its own merits and with provision of a car share vehicle, and only with provision of a car share vehicle, it meets the department's criteria for the ratio of parking stalls per dwelling unit if the car share is included. They also have provided 10 indoor secure bike parking stalls. There is less parking on site than I think was in the 2021 development. And the reason for that is primarily because, as you mentioned, it was underground. So there's more kind of footprint to use than when you're trying to do it at grade and also fit the space for other things, active space at grade. I can't comment right now on what the change exactly is in the number of parking stalls.
Okay, well, just because we're talking about this, and I'd be interesting to know the planning's thought, because we are seeing more buildings that are vacant, and there is some comments regarding, people don't have access to parking, so they're not, buildings are sitting vacant. We are trying to have pedestrian friendly communities, so we do want businesses within these. Is the planning department concerned at all that the fact that we have, we're adding more commercial use buildings to this location when we have a large vacancy rate, and part of it is the parking issue. So do you look at that all in its totality?
We do. I mean, if there is a case where somebody is looking to introduce commercial zoning into a location that is not supported by policy, we sometimes ask the proponent to provide some information on, what is the vacancy rate nearby, like why should the planning department get behind and put our support behind new commercial zoning. But in this case, it's there in policy already, so there's no really position for the public service to ask for justification on it. The plan does seek small scale commercial in this portion of the site that faces Stafford. Also, like with respect to everything fitting together, as you mentioned, the parking, there is an acknowledgement that there are ingredients towards creating a true walkable environment where people are using different modes of transportation is to sometimes you do go lower on parking in favor of some other options like indoor secure bike parking. If it's in a location that has very good access to transit, which this one does, being close to Corydon and Rideau and Stafford, which also has transit. And this building itself allows people to walk to have some needs met in these commercial units, and people walk around this area a lot. No, they don't all. A lot of people use their cars all the time. But as public service, it all has to be looked at together, and we kind of have a bottom that we don't go lower than for parking supply with car share, and that's been met in this case. So we're in favor of the parking ratio for those reasons.
The parking ratios right now, 0 for commercial, and 1-to-1 with the other employees in there, whether it be bike parking, car share, has 30. So 15 parking stalls, 10 indoor parking stalls, and 5 off the lane, which is 30 units, so it's 1-to-1. Taking the commercial get into account, but then you also added in the bike storage and the car share, correct? So that's how you make sure of. So I guess my question to you is, what would be the requirement for commercial with that part? Because right now I don't see where they're going to have a park, but where would that commercial find parking? Like what would be the number they're required to have if this was just straight
Right. So yeah, so it's a good question. So the commercial units, there are two commercial units and both of them are small enough that they require one stall each. So stalls are required for the commercial.
We're all there, more at the point?
No.
No, we're good. Ish. Okay, all right. That's it for us, administration. Moving on.
So then we'll call the applicant back to speak in rebuttal to any comments made.
So we drop the phone down.
Good afternoon, John Winchell again. We're here for a zoning agreement amendment for a plan approval. I heard a lot of people talking this morning about a variety of items. I'll address a couple that are actually relevant to this public hearing. Garbage collection will be from a Mullock's bin, which is in ground in the back of the building, right near the back lane. The side yard has been increased greater than what it was before being proposed. So let's see, I'll double check right now. There is a 11-foot east side yard now against 909 McMillan. That came up once as well. And then that's why we didn't go with the setback, because we increased the side yard. So one of the last speakers spoke about the setback and items like that, stepping the building back. What we did was move the building further away from the house to the building to the east of us for 909, 11 feet. A lot of the comments here today had to do with items that are completely irrelevant to this public hearing, about the critique about images in the professional planners submission, or to the drawing the architect did, or about the critique of the applicant, or about Manitoba Hydro leaving dangling lines, or how the trees were removed. That has nothing to do with the design of the building. Nobody talked about the masonry on the bottom floor. Nobody talked about the color of the siding. That's what we're here for. A lot of items had to do with variances. And if we need to talk about the variances, there probably is going to be a public hearing about that. I will have a presentation to talk about the variances. These lands were rezoned. I understand it was a very controversial change in the neighborhood 4 years ago. The lands are now vacant. It has RMU zoning. Something is happening on these lands. The previous design was criticized. It was changed, came forward with a different design. If this design is not coming forward, another design will come forward, and then another one, and then another one. Eventually, something will get approved here, or another alternative method of approval will happen. Something is happening here on these vacant pieces of land. The sooner people understand that, perhaps they will come forward and start talking about the design of the building. These lands are not staying vacant forever. They're not going to have a house on it. It's zoned for multiple family. The design that was put forward is radically different and changed from what was presented before. I wasn't involved in that process. I heard about it. I live in the neighborhood. I'm at that Starbucks probably every afternoon. I drive by this site 3-4 times a day, or bus by or walk by. I live in the neighborhood. So I know this site. I've been watching it for as long as I've lived in the neighborhood now, for more than 15 years. Something's going to happen on this piece of land. Something sooner than later. There's a demand for housing. There's a market for housing. The owner of the property has invested into this property and wants to construct something on it. So if it's not going to be this design today, then another design will come forward. Again, likely less and less likely that people are going to be involved, because they're just going to start plowing forward. We did do engagement. Corrine went and hand delivered a letter to every house in that neighborhood back in June. Prior to we had any response from the city regarding variances, we wanted to do engagement in June, not in July or August or September. June is a good time of year to do engagement. That's when she did it. A lot of the questions that she was getting had to do about the past. I was involved in the past as a professional applicant on this. I'm not here really to talk about the past. Whatever happened, totally different design. I'm here today because there's a brick building with nice, I think, attractive masonry, a lot of windows along Stafford. The siding is different shades of beiges, whites, and grays. The garbage is in the northwest corner with a Mullock's bin. It's screened from Stafford. We've reduced parking. We've tried to increase the number of suites and made them smaller to provide more attainable housing for people into the area. It's a very walkable community. The facades are very walkable and contribute to that walkable environment along Stafford and McMillan. We'll provide some landscaping. We're looking to make it a very attractive looking building here that fits in with the community. I understand people are very passionate about their neighborhoods, but I think some passions have crossed some lines recently in Winnipeg more than a few times. And so I'm looking for residents to understand something is happening on this property. It's not sitting vacant. Something will be constructed on here.
I don't believe anybody said that today.
I'd like to see something constructed here.
We're looking to the application you have today, like, never heard anybody say nothing's ever happened to the property. So I think they understand something is happening. The question is this thing which you want to do, something that they.
Then the design we're here today is masonry on the ground floor surrounding the building. A lot of windows along Stafford, a lot of windows along McMillan. We've got some smaller balconies. They're not large. There's some smaller balconies facing towards the east and to the west, none towards the south. We put located the most of the bulk of the building with the larger suites are in the corner. Is pushed then back because we want to have a good presence on the corner. We push the building back with yards. We move the building away from the neighbor directly to the east. Those are the design changes we considered. My understanding is the proponents of the property heard everybody speak last time, heard the critique about the design last time, went with a different architect firm to try to address those concerns and try to come up with something that fits, that they feel fits and address a lot of the concern. So again, it's a 4-story building, 30 dwelling units. Commercial is on the ground floor towards Stafford. There's a 3-foot side yard against Stafford. Again, the building is being pushed up to Stafford to make it more into a walkable environment. The rear yard is 10 feet. There's 11-foot side yard against McMillan, but we're taking access just off the back lane, not from Stafford, off McMillan, because those helps to the walkability of the pedestrian street and the environment along there. We're going to have garbages in ground with the mullet waste system. Commercial entrances are going to be along Stafford, with the residential along McMillan, again, to contribute to that residential feel along McMillan and contribute to the more commercial aspect along Stafford. So those are the designs that the applicant we have put forward, working with the design team and the proponent of the project. Again, we're here for a plan approval for something. This is the building design. The variances, if residents have concerns with the variances, I understand their concerns. That would be a different public hearing if they want to appeal it. And then at that point, we would get into the variances that are related to some minor variances related to yards and to parking. There's no variance for height here and no variance for design on the variances. So we will deal with those minor variances if need be at a public hearing for that. Other than that, I'm open to questions. That's okay.
I got you. Cora.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. We do win.
Like in 2 minutes, I'll have something for you, Mr. Chair.
We're not here.
Don't have to. Someone gotta.
Not really. Yeah, sorry, it's not that's over. So now we closed, we haven't closed it yet, but we don't really go back.
No opportunity to respond.
No, yeah, sorry, that's how the process works, yeah.
All right. Try something. So I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
All in support, opposed, carried.
Okay. I move that the receipt of public representations be concluded with thanks that from all that came to the hearing today on a Monday.
Support.
Aye.
Opposed. Carried.
And I'm going to move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be not concurred in and forwarded to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development. And I'm going to provide some supportive reasons. And I'll probably need about 10 minutes, Mr. Chair. I'll try to keep it shorter. You know, there are there is truth on both sides of this issue, and I appreciate that when that occurs, sometimes passions arise. As a local councillor, and these aren't my supportive reasons to the clerk, I have supportive reasons that I can send you and summarize really quickly. As a local councillor, I've had a ton of casework over the years, probably dating past 2020. As a local councillor, I saw a vote of mine overturned back in 2020, 2021. This is not that day, but local traffic on casework and dereliction and fires and distressing events that happen when there's vacancies, that just fueled the passion of this former chair of property and development. It is passions that generally I try to inform any developer that might buy a property generally. I try to let everyone know, because if you talk to me as a developer, I'll let you know the casework that I've had on your property before I bought it, and that you join a show already in progress. And I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Winthrop that something will be constructed. As a matter of fact, as a local councillor, when I don't oppose development often, actually, because I believe that there's a housing crisis. So this was one of the handful of times I opposed. I do oppose because if I am displeased with the design and it hurts my eyes, there are a handful of times where I have, and I can name at least 3 where I've said no. And this was actually one of them, not this design that we have before us. This design I've approved before, actually. I've approved a design exactly somewhat like this before. But the matter before us today, and we don't have variances before us today, but what we do have is that substantial conformance clause, right? That's the number one thing that is the reason why it's here today, that the public service is saying it substantially conforms. And that's where I'll say there's truth on both sides. So here, and I want to thank the developer for the thoughtful discussion on the in-ground bins. Those are very helpful when they are installed, especially in high density areas. I don't have them enough given the 100-year-old buildings we have. So with respect to the supportive reasons, here it is. I can't argue, like the public service has, that this is in substantial conformance with the 2021 proposal. There are some things that are out of scope in that. Number one, the previous to this consultation and how engaged the public was then as with respect to the elements that a previous iteration of this committee, it was us, said no to. That was the granular knowledge we had. But what is relevant, I think, that in terms of substantial conformance is the key differences. The parking configuration at the time was underground parking, and this proposal is ground level. And the change in parking structure from this to that is a substantial shift. In terms of both design and impacts on the adjacent area. That change also does have implications on traffic patterns. I opened my ward office up on Stafford. I'm having a change in traffic patterns. The second point is the building height and floor count. It isn't before us today, but what is the substantial conformance. And while the building height remains the same in part, there are considerations when taken together that we just simply don't have a line of sight on here in this public hearing. And so while it remains the same, the previous proposal included varying heights. The number of dwelling units, 22 dwelling units to 30 dwelling units. Generally speaking, my votes lean to if you can add 10 to 20 units, let's go for it. We're in a housing crisis. Increasing the dwelling units by 8 is a change. You know, should the higher density trigger a reassessment of the proposal alone? I would probably argue not, but I will mention it. The bike room, I think, is a positive change. I generally am very happy from a sustainability perspective that bike rooms I get excited about. It's part of what I like to tour when I look at a new building. You have one right across the street on Grosvenor there that I toured recently. That I will point out. The no outdoor commercial patios that was removed. That was potential, whether you see that as a potential community benefit or a removal that allows for increased ease of foot traffic, matters not. It is a substantial change. Balconies, I am pro balcony. I do not believe that you are leering in to your neighbors just because you have a window or a balcony. But the removal of the balconies, they do contribute to living space. Ms. Lamont, talked about the neighborhood heating with the loss of trees. That's another reason why ventilation and, in addition to aesthetic appeal, I like a balcony. But the omission of these features is the issue for me. The taken together, I do think this is a substantial enough question to say no today. And while I agree that something will be built here, I think that, what might not be relevant today was how controversial it came into City Hall here back in 2020 and 2021. But I can't suggest that this proposal doesn't require a more in-depth review or adjustments. And so, that the question before me today is narrow, taken together with the 6 or so things I mentioned. I'll say that I disagree with the public service report with respect to the matter of its insubstantial conformance to what had been approved back in 2020. So that's the supportive reasons. I welcome any discussion from the committee.
My feelings are the same as Councillor Rowland's. I think there is quite a bit of difference here, and I think her comments are very well said.
Sorry, Councillor Rowland as well, so we'll call the vote. All those in support of Councillor Rowland's motion? Ayes?
Aye.
Opposed, none? Carried.
All right, I'll close out the hearing with thanks and move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded.
Aye.
Carried.
Please note that the committee has made a recommendation on this matter that will now proceed to council. No further representations are permitted, and all persons registered for the public hearing will receive notice when the matter is to be considered by council.
Without finishing anybody? Hello? We'll take a 2-minute break and we'll then get on to what you ate right. Welcome back, everyone. We have just concluded one public hearing and we're moving on to our second one. It's a variance for 128 River Avenue. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Item 2 is a variance at 128 River Avenue under file DAV 263772/2024D. Please note communications were received in support of the matter, which have been distributed to all members of the committee. If it is the will of the committee, we'll get an overview from the planner.
Please do, thank you.
Good afternoon, committee. The property is located on the south side of River Avenue between Arctic Street and Queen Elizabeth Way in the River Osborne neighborhood of the Fort Rouge East Fort Garry Ward. Property zoned RMU is 4,587 square feet in size and contains a 2-story building. The immediate area is characterized by mixed development densities. There is a school across the street and a daycare behind. The property is a 1-minute walk to rapid transit stop on Queen Elizabeth Way, and Harkness Transit Station is a 4-minute walk southwest. In 2024, City Center Community Committee approved variances for a 6-story dwelling on the property, and council approved an associated application to rezone the land to RMU. The property was sold, and the new owner's revised proposal requires the approval of new variances within the RMU district. Because it's been less than 2 years since the previous variance was cited by Community Committee, this variance comes back to Community Committee. The applicant seeks variances for density, yards, parking, and garbage enclosure in order to establish a 6-story residential building with 19 units. The rear yard will contain secure bike parking and landscaping. Vehicular parking will be underneath the building. Unlike the previous proposal, this project uses the density bonusing for affordable housing program. It will provide 4 affordable units rented equal to or below provincial affordable housing rental rates for a minimum of 20 years. The applicant worked with the Urban Planning Division through a collaborative planning process and agreed to activate the street with active uses presenting a foyer to conceal most of parking from view of River Avenue, providing a car share vehicle and affordable units due to the requested density. Public Service supports the rezoning and the variances because the proposed development provides missing middle housing with variances that are suited to this urban mature neighborhood context with its mix of densities, its mid-rise building heights, and its smaller yards, and its proximity to downtown, which is just across the bridge. The applicant is providing a car share vehicle that was already mentioned. The provision of affordable units meeting the city's affordability definition helps reduce the amount of household income that Winnipeggers spend on rent. That's the introduction of public service.
Any questions?
No, let's go.
All right.
All right. So first up, we have Ryan M.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's
That is our plan.
Oh, no.
And you're Adam?
Yes, I am.
Good. Then we have Adam Dubina.
Hey. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us. Well, just to introduce ourselves, I'm Ryan F., the applicant on the sheet. I'm the landscape architect with FD3, representing the company. And Adam is the architect and principal in charge on this project as well. Very good.
Presentation.
Yes, we do have a presentation that we emailed.
Export. We had submitted one in advance, or else I think we have a USB.
Yeah, we have it. If you do want to show it, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to show it. Yeah.
We do. Yeah. Thank you. Little bit of background, although Mr. Ross covered a lot of the background already. So the property was rezoned and had a number of variances.
was then sold to the new owner who hired us to do a redesign of the project. That design work looked at a few functional issues with the previous design, as well as us wanting to look a little further at livability of the project, particularly with the type of affordable units. Previous were SRO, kind of dorm style units, and we're providing fully self-contained studio apartments for affordable units, as well as enlarged 1 and 2 bedroom suites that were sort of unlivably small in the previous design, which meant we had to find a little bit of wiggle room to be able to fit that on the site. So with everything we looked at, really it was livability that we were looking at, as well as affordability. As was noted, at least 4 affordable units. I can also say that in the design, 8 of the units are identical, so the plan is those would actually all be of the same affordability type, so almost half the building. I will. Hopefully you can see this. Just wanted to give you a bit of background on design and thinking a little bit on this project, which hopefully helps you understand where we were coming from. So when looking at larger suites, but the same amount of suites as before, we had to look at growing the building slightly south. So on the right side, you can kind of see the south property. So there's also a tree, which looks like a little green popsicle.
Yeah.
There's a large existing elm tree that we were trying very hard to keep. So the plan was to use that tree like a force so that the building would terrace back and pull away from that tree and away from the south property. So simultaneously giving access to daylight, more separation from the daycare property, roof terraces, etc., and focusing the primary roof terrace and balconies to the north and south of the property, as we're 4 feet and 6 feet from the east and west yards. The front of the building has a similar reverse gesture where we thought of the movement to the front door as pushing in the building, so to speak. So that's why at the front entrance, you see it coming back in, creating a bit of a private entrance, protected entrance. So that's really quickly the concept.
Okay. So in the rendering that you see before you, you can tell that we really tried to concentrate on having it be a welcoming front to that street, using warm materials such as wood, and a little bit darker hue of a siding there as well. Lots of windows facing the street, so that's more eyes on the street for greater safety and security of the neighborhood. And you can see at the vestibule level, just to the left as that car is entering, that's all completely glazed as well. So it provides good views, not only to the street, but also to that drive aisle where the vehicles can enter the building on that side. We've got fencing on 3 sides of the property, 6 foot high wood fencing. It would be opaque up to about 4 feet high. And then above, there is some opening in the slats. So it provides that screening while also providing some, limited views in, just again, to help with that security and safety of that area. Looking at the back of the building, so this would be in perspective of kind of the corner of that daycare space. Another reason we're stepping back that building is that so it's not such an imposing mass onto that daycare space as well. The exterior balconies face the south and provides opportunities for, small pot gardening there, activates that backyard. And although we went through great lengths and got an arborist report to look at trying to save that existing tree that was there. However, they did say that with the development and the size of the lot, they could see that tree really kind of declining. And so at that point, we realized fairly quickly and reluctantly that maybe the best course of action is actually to remove that tree. And the reasons being just if that tree started to decline could create kind of an unsafe condition, especially considering that daycare yard right there. And then once it is removed, or say it does decline, how do you remove that safely with it being kind of hemmed in there? At that time, we did meet with the daycare yard to talk about just that exact issue, and they seem to be on board with our approach. And we've got that arborist report, I think, appended in the documents.
So we'll be planting new trees in its place.
Yeah,
to do what we can.
Yeah, there's room for 2 trees there to plant and grow in its place there. Moving on to the site plan. So this is just showing the planting areas to the front where that building is set back to provide a bit of a buffer zone. One thing that the rendering does omit, if I go back to the front, is we do have a fairly wide public boulevard space there, and there is an existing tree that will be remaining. We had just taken it out to show the building a little bit better in this rendering view. But you can see those 2 circles at the top. So there is one that would be maintained and protected at that boulevard space there. From the public side, we've got lots of a wide opening to that main entry, so nice and open and full of light. We've got shrubs and planting bed along the west side and the south side, again with those 2 new trees shown there. We've got a bike enclosure, fenced-in bike enclosure at the south end, along with or beside the enclosure for the waste and recycling. The vehicle approach coming in takes it, well, there is an existing vehicle approach there. We are actually widening it a little bit and bringing it back onto our property because it was previously partially on the neighboring property as well. You can see with our setbacks along the east side that we show the building overhang pushed in to provide some separation to 114 River. And then there is some structure along that fence line to support those floors above. And we had to place that structure there to provide room for that drive aisle, as well as an accessible route from the accessible stall that's behind the building there. And of course, we do have the car share vehicle parking spot in the back as well. So much touch on that.
This is just really quickly a few sample floor plans, just so you have an understanding of above. The 2nd, 4th, and 6th levels, just to get a bit of an understanding. And you can see on that south end as the building gets smaller as you go up. So there are 1-bedroom suites facing north, 2-bedroom suites facing south, and our affordable units sort of in the middle there. Small floor layout with a scissor stair and an elevator, as compact as can fit on this compact site. And lastly, a common room was added in our design efforts onto the top floor, including a common balcony space, so that all residents have access to outdoor space and common space on the property. So I think that's a really quick rundown. I think that's what we have. Any question?
It is the case that we approve, a parking plan, and then it gets changed for affordability reasons. We're a long way out from, approval to permitting phase. Hopefully not that long. But could you comment on that? Because you have a fairly lax parking plan. It looks expensive to me. It's not a criticism.
What I could say about the parking, I guess, as well, is the original intent when we started our design effort was to match, but with a new design aesthetic, the previous submission to avoid a whole bunch of new variances. Parking was one of those where we were trying to keep the 5 stalls that I believe they had originally to 5 stalls, as well as being able to get an elevator and stairs and a lobby all fitting on a very, very small property. So we've provided the most parking, let's say, that can fit, knowing that there isn't parking for everyone there, but we're also, as mentioned, extremely close to the rapid transit station. And so we anticipate that being used a lot for sure.
Okay. That's all I have. I guess, sorry, I lied. One more question pertaining to the trees. So when you've got a daycare space and you've got children and you've got the sun, typically those trees are very helpful. So it sounded like you considered that too.
Certainly. Yeah, there are some existing trees within the daycare care space as well that are quite mature. I think important to note too that we're on the north side of that daycare space, so that a lot of the shade would be cast to the north, although that elm tree was very large and did provide some shading to that space as well. But that's the whole reason why we wanted to really have that special meeting with the daycare people. We went to the daycare establishment and met with them there to go out and look at the tree and also look at their trees on site as well, to have that discussion and what that impact would be on them.
Okay. That's all my questions.
No more? Thank you. Thank you.
I don't have anybody else registered, so I'll just check with the gallery if there's anyone else here who wishes to speak in support of this application. Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Or anyone for information? Seeing none, Mr. Chairperson.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready to go.
I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
I'm carried.
I move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
I'm carried.
I move that in accordance with subsection 2473 of the City of Winnipeg Charter, the variance is consistent with Plan Winnipeg and any applicable secondary plan does not create a substantial adverse effect of the amenities, use, safety, and convenience of the adjoining property and adjacent area, including an area separated from the property by a street or waterway, is the minimum modification of a zoning bylaw required to relieve the injurious effects of the zoning bylaw on the applicant's property and is compatible with the area in which the property to be affected is situated. In terms of supporting reasons, I will say gorgeous design. If anything looked and smelled like the river, there you go. That beautiful building that was designed. But in terms of being consistent and with our need for missing middle, given the adjacent amenities, the public service report absolutely points to rapid transit and Harkness Station. The local councillor really feels very involved on this particular site, given its very unique history. I had our hands in rezoning it and we actually paid for that. So that's not always that we do that. So it's kind of exciting that we might be getting to a point where we see something more different than a site that was met with tragedy in the past. And I want to acknowledge that too. My heart actually is very involved in this site. And then, so the compatibility with the area is really consistent. And it really is a complementary addition and hopefully it'll get built quick. So, moved.
Favor? Aye. Opposed? I'm carried. Thank you.
The recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in and the variance be approved. And that the public hearing with respect to this application and with thanks be concluded.
Or opposed here.
Please note that the committee's decision with respect to this application may be appealed. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the order issued, which will be mailed to all persons registered. And that concludes our public hearings for today.
Mr. Chair, I have 2 additional motions that I would like to move at this time. I'd need a suspension of the rules, of course.
So moved on.
Word, was carried.
So the first motion is with respect to addressing housing affordability and what we anticipate as a utility rate increase. We were, me, Councillor Gilroy, have been for pretty much 2 terms the Housing Committee. While I recently left Property and Development, I am no less interested in housing, and I know that you are both interested in housing too. And so it is with that in mind that the first motion pertaining to addressing housing affordability in light of anticipated utility rate increases in March that we will hear in March. Hopefully, we know it's a report that's coming and has been for some time. So the motion reads as follows: whereas the City of Winnipeg recognizes the need to raise utility rates, particularly to manage costs associated with the new North End Water Pollution Control Center as outlined in the recent budget. And whereas any increase in utility rates must consider the impact on affordability of services for Winnipeg residents, particularly those struggling with housing affordability. And whereas rent increases in conjunction with rising utility costs could result in a net loss of affordable housing units across the city, exacerbating the housing affordability crisis and negatively affecting low-income families. And whereas the affordability of utility services is a critical issue, and while the city does have a partnership with Siloam to provide subsidies to low-income residents, we know something of the past figures that have been distributed under $11,000 likely means that the current program needs greater outreach, visibility for residents that need to even know about it. So I'm looking for your support in a resolution with respect to this that would, and I'm just calling up some language that I worked out with the clerk here. Namely, oh, sorry, just lost. Sorry. I just lost it.
I can read it into the record if you'd like.
Yeah, could you?
Yes, therefore be it resolved that the City Centre Community Committee recommend to the Standing Policy Committee on Water, Waste and Environment that the Winnipeg Public Service be directed to report back in 30 days on the following. 1. The impact of utility rate increases on affordability for Winnipeg residents, particularly low-income families, and provides recommendations for expanding the existing affordability programs, including increased visibility and outreach for programs like Siloam Mission Subsidy Program, with a specific focus on addressing barriers to access for vulnerable groups. 2. An analysis of the correlation between rent increases due to higher utility rates and the loss of affordable housing units within the city, and present strategies to mitigate this impact, such as incentives for landlords to maintain affordable rents or provide energy-efficient upgrades. 3. An outline of an ongoing framework for transparency and governance in the rate-setting process, ensuring that all future utility rate increases are implemented with clarity, stakeholder consultation, and clear communication with residents. This report should recommend mechanisms for periodic reviews of the rate structure and the effectiveness of affordability measures, and be it further resolved that the public service prioritize public engagement on these matters through consultations with affected residents, advocacy groups, and housing experts, and that the report include a detailed action plan based on these consultations.
So that is the only question I have is that the applicability of water and waste with respect to the motion. the third element of that motion with respect to transparency and governance. I do, everybody heard me say that I thought there needed to be a line of sight with respect to both a tax increase, which I don't oppose for the record. Everybody probably knows that too. But with taken together with a utility rate hike, and it being unpacked is a choice. And I don't think it's the right one, especially with respect to housing affordability in this city. And when, taking together, 3 apartments on Taylor is over $125,000 more, and they can take a utility rate hike and go to residential tenancies branch, any apartment, and get a rate hike, which could eliminate affordable units in this city. We are working very hard to add some. We just added 4, perhaps even half of the building that we just did on River today. But there is a potential here. So that's the only one that I don't think is necessarily the purview. Traditionally, when we have that type of economic report, it comes centrally through the CAO's office. So that's the only one that, I'll stare meaningfully into the clerk's eyes and say, I do think that perhaps substantially overall it's water and waste, but I see that it could be actually executive policy committee, because executive policy committee, controls some of the correlation of affordable housing, which is property and development. And and when it comes from an ongoing framework of transparency and governance in the rate setting process, that clarity and stakeholder consultation isn't water and waste alone. So I'm not sure if Mr. Prinsloo, working as quick as he did, considered those elements. But in the main, that's the motion, to ensure that the utility rate increases anticipated don't disproportionately impact Winnipeg's residents, in particular residents that already have affordability issues, and then as the housing committee, or the last councillors named to that committee, I think that we're continue to be concerned around the transparency work to ensure that we're not losing units. So moved.
Question for you though, by 30 days?
That is impossible. So I think that what I would have liked, and what I will argue is that I agree it's impossible for the public servants. But what I will argue is, and I also want a clarification that it should be written, which I don't know, I wouldn't want to see a verbal report, for instance. So I might need a small amendment there. But with respect to 30 days, what I think is important is that we anticipate at Water and Waste the utility rate report that has been long since awaited. And so my point with 30 days is to, in fact, say, these are the types of things that Winnipeggers would have expected us to be talking about in budget, but could not, because a choice was made that separated the two. And that is a choice. And it's a choice that I, was clear I personally didn't want to see made. And so now here we are. And so, time is of the essence to consider these things. I think the time was to consider them back in November, December. And so I do think 30 days will be amended. I probably anticipate this whole kit and caboodle to be received as information, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And so I will, be speaking to it if it goes to Water and Waste. I'm lucky enough to be on that committee. If it goes to another committee, I'll be speaking to it, and yeah.
Right, I understand. Maybe I should have mentioned one. Yeah, the other one is, it also talked about, such as incentives for landlords to maintain affordable houses and property. So again, I think there's also finance in here.
Yes.
So that's another, so I'm not sure where I'll go, but we'll let the stream go where stream goes, where it flows, and they'll have time to work on that for water and waste. But yeah, there's some obviously information. You can get one line. As a non-EBC member for a while, I've been amazed on how everything is just nothing. Just received information all over. No consideration, and I really hope to have a meeting. We hope we have some good discussions, and I think that's all we really can ask for with this press machine. But I think your intent here is quite a lot of them. Really, with the fixed tax, water rates fixed, and poor are gonna get crushed. This is gonna be horrible. And things we're bringing up was the fact that the units who were affordable housing units, will they still be affordable housing? That's I never thought that point, so I really appreciate that as well. That is a main driver. We may differ on market stuff, but the affordable housing we all know is critical for Winnipeg. That is our main, we should do it. So if we're doing this, and it should be part of the budget as well. I know they don't have to, but because it's substantial, not a little one, substantial, I think this is well timed. But and you've asked my question for the 30 days, so I'm important.
Yeah, it might be advantageous to include 30 days or another recommended timeline from the public service. Right? It might show a degree of openness that we're serious about the motion. We don't want it just received as information. I do think time is of the essence, so I'd be amenable. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So all those for the motion?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none, carried.
And then a second motion on addressing business stability in light of the utility rate increases. So this one reads that whereas the city of Winnipeg recognizes the need to raise utility rates, particularly to manage costs associated with the new North End Water Pollution Control Center as outlined in the recent budget, and whereas any increase in utility rates must consider the impact on the ability of local businesses to remain competitive and operational all the time, but especially in uncertain economic times. And whereas businesses in certain sectors, particularly those that rely heavily on water issues, and there are a few I've named here, are facing or can face additional challenges in managing utility costs, which can threaten jobs, their profitability, overall economic stability of those sectors. So be it resolved that the city of Winnipeg direct the public service to prepare and present again another report, a public report, to be delivered to council within the next 60 to 90 days. I'll leave it to the committee to discuss, because again, I think time is of the essence, to assess the unique challenges faced by businesses, especially those in water intensive sectors, and offer a clear line of sight for business planning with consideration for mitigating financial burdens, outlines an ongoing framework for transparency and governance in the rate setting process. Some of this will sound familiar. And clear communication, that the report should recommend mechanisms for review and include a plan for continued engagement with the business community, particularly in sectors heavily reliant on water, to foster an environment of stability and certainty regarding not only the rates, but long-term business success. And that be it further resolved that there's a public engagement component with that. And I will ask Mr. Prinsloo, because he also supported some language that might be slightly different than what I read into the record, to consider this along with the second motion.
I like it, it's fine. I won't be supporting strategies to give businesses the break more, because that money will have to come from the residents somewhere. I believe I know we had disagreements on that. But to give them a break on business, we just actually got rid of that break a couple of budgets ago, where the high-end water users got that away. However, for the battle later on, when it comes forward, I just want to flag that's not something I'm looking for. Maybe I could be surprised But if I have a choice between,
I could change it to make it more clear that I'm looking for options. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, maybe that's fine. It should include options to help or whatever. So you can leave it that way if you want. I'm just telling you in the future, if it says we're gonna give $1 million to high-end water users, and that's gonna come, let's forget it. But that's in the future. So I think, but again, same model as the first one. It's getting it out there in front of people. I'm amazed this isn't done already. If it has been done, I'm amazed we haven't seen it. But they should have contacted all the businesses. They should have gone advocacy groups and said, we're gonna get a big water rate jump. How does it affect you? That should have already been done. I'm hoping, but I'm assuming it hasn't. So I think it's quite appropriate.
Yeah, again, I'm all in on making sure that the North End Water Pollution Control Center happens, that it happens as quickly as possible, because our city really is, this is a strategic piece of infrastructure. The feds recognize that. We've been doing a lot of work to increase the public awareness with respect to the provincial and federal government, and the mayor certainly mentioned it in literally every federal provincial interaction that he had, and I'm grateful for it. But again, with respect to transparency and governance, not including those aspects, and there was absolutely a sentence that said, we're going to have to look at increases in budget, but not requesting that we have that line of sight was a choice. We had a gathering of counselors that were concerned about the economic chill of Trump 2.0 recently. And it is, I think, somewhat disingenuous to, as a city, be concerned about that without doing the everyday homework that people require, whether it is, permits that are required to do business in this city, and making sure those are expedited and not pain points that delay and cost money, or it is a utility rate that is likely to increase, and that we haven't done as sufficient of teamwork on council to understand. There's been no council seminar for that as of yet, for instance, let alone matters in which to talk to each of our biz zones about it. And so this will provide something, if it is accepted, that would provide that line of sight. A little late, I think. I think this should be this type of thing that is in concert. But perhaps to his credit, this was the type of thing Councillor Eadie had in mind when he asked for, a bit of a delay in the March meeting of Water and Waste Committee, Standing Policy Committee. It was supposed to be early March, and now it is, mid, just a few days, a week later. But still, it's still another delay. And I think, given what was in budget, we need to do some homework here. So,
So we have businesses, we have residents, but we also have shared service agreements. I don't know if the Pauls and Springfield, are they aware that this is coming? I have no idea.
Very good point.
They were very upset when they had put the pipes in before, residents of those areas. And we've never really got an update on that thing at all, ever. I don't think in our 10 years. Is there somewhere in here that we want to include the Pauls and their shared service agreements, or do you want to leave that over now?
So I think that that conversation is an important one. I think that this type of information will lend itself to that. It wasn't necessarily the intent is so that it didn't undermine the stability of local businesses, and that the city fosters an economic environment through transparent governance and clear communications. you know, and then yes, as a product that can go out to business groups, as a product that can go out to, you know, our business zones, you know, to sectors that, you know, we do the analysis on and offers that clear line of sight. And then, yeah, in turn, it would offer, you know, other partners that you're considering, you know, more to say on that. Yeah, I think there's more to say on that. I think there's more to say on that.
Okay, good. I have a lot to say about this. All in support?
Aye.
Number 2? Aye.
Yeah.
Aye. 3 ayes. No nays. So moved.
Okay.
Adjourn.
No, so moved.
So moved. No support. Motion not carried. Thank you, everybody. That's it. That's the full day.